Richard Whitmore grabbed the $35,000 architectural model with both hands and hurled it onto the marble floor. "Get this worthless trash out of my sight!" The crash exploded through the lobby like a gunshot. Glass and wood shattered in every direction, spinning across polished stone toward the feet of a black man in a gray maintenance uniform. "And you?" Whitmore's finger stabbed toward the janitor. "Clean up this mess before my client arrives. On your knees, now." Marcus Thompson, 32 years old, sank down onto the cold marble. A shard sliced into his palm. Blood began dripping onto the white floor. 20 people watched. Not one moved to help. What nobody in that room knew was that the man bleeding on his knees could design a building better than anyone in that entire company. But they were about to find out. If you want to see what happens when a man who has been invisible his whole life finally decides to be seen, subscribe to this channel right now and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. Marcus Thompson's knees hit marble and pain shot straight up through his spine. He didn't make a sound. 5 years of practice had taught him that. Blood was already pooling in his palm where the glass had cut deep. He reached for the first piece of debris anyway. "I said clean it up." Whitmore's voice cracked across the silent lobby. "Are you deaf or just stupid?" "Yes, sir." Marcus kept his eyes down. "Right away, sir." He crawled forward, gathering broken pieces of what had been somebody's months of work. $35,000 of craftsmanship, now garbage for him to collect with bleeding hands. A woman in a designer suit stepped directly over him. Her stiletto heel came down an inch from his fingers. She didn't look down. She didn't slow down. He was furniture. "Whitmore!" The voice boomed from the entrance. Marcus looked up without raising his head, a skill he'd mastered long ago. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansour was striding across the lobby with 4 engineers behind him. His robes flowed with each step. His face was carved from stone. Whitmore transformed instantly. The rage melted away. His shoulders dropped. A smile spread across his face so fast it looked almost painful. "Sheikh Al-Mansour." Whitmore practically ran to meet him. "Welcome back to Pinnacle Architecture. We're absolutely delighted to stop." The sheik held up one hand. His cold eyes swept the scene. The broken model, the blood on the marble, the black man on his knees, surrounded by debris. "Is this how you run your business?" His voice was quiet, but carried through the entire space. "Destroying models, making workers bleed on your floor. A momentary frustration, nothing more." Whitmore's smile flickered. "That model was outdated anyway. My team has made tremendous progress on your team has failed." The sheik stepped closer to Whitmore, close enough that the CEO had to look up slightly. "I reviewed the foundation designs you sent. They are catastrophically flawed. If the Crescent Tower is built as specified, it will collapse within 5 years. People will die. Do you understand what I am telling you?" Marcus's hand slowed on the debris. The foundation designs. He'd seen them 2 days ago in a trash bin outside the conference room. He'd recognized the fatal flaw in under a minute. "Sheikh Al-Mansour, I assure you." "Assurances are worthless." The sheikh checked his watch. Diamonds glittered on the face. 30 days. You have 30 days to fix this problem. If you cannot, I will pull my funding. All $85 million. And I will find architects who value human lives more than their egos. He turned toward the elevator. Then he stopped and looked back at Marcus, still kneeling in broken glass in his own blood. "And get that man some bandages. In my country, we do not let our workers bleed." The elevator doors closed behind him, and the lobby erupted into chaos. "Conference room," Whitmore roared at his team. "Everyone, now!" Executives scattered like roaches. Within seconds, the lobby was empty except for Marcus and the mess he was still cleaning. He sat back on his heels and looked at his hands. The cuts were deep. They would hurt for days. But the physical pain wasn't what made his jaw clench. It was knowing that he could fix the foundation problem. He could fix it in an hour. He could see the solution so clearly it was like looking at a photograph. And it was completely, utterly useless. Because nobody would ever listen to the man who cleaned the toilets. Marcus finished gathering debris and dumped it in his cart. He mopped up his own blood. He checked his reflection in the polished marble to make sure his face showed nothing. Then he pushed his cart toward the service elevator and went back to work. The executive floor was chaos. Marcus moved through it like a ghost, emptying trash and wiping surfaces while Whitmore's team raced between offices. He stopped outside the main conference room to collect a bin of discarded papers. Through the glass wall, he could see them clustered around a massive table covered with blueprints. Brandon Hayes stood at the whiteboard. 34 years old, Harvard-educated, tailored suit that cost more than Marcus made in a month. He was drawing diagrams with the confidence of a man who had never been told he was wrong. Marcus recognized the approach immediately. It was wrong. "The solution is simple," Brandon was saying. His voice was muffled through the glass, but still audible. "We reinforce the eastern support columns and redistribute the load across the secondary framework." James Chen, one of the senior engineers, shook his head. "That only addresses part of the problem. What about the northern support structure?" "The northern structure is fine. The issue is load distribution." "Brandon, the wind stress calculations clearly show." "James." Brandon's voice sharpened. "I've analyzed this from every angle. Trust me. This approach will work." Marcus's jaw tightened. That approach would address maybe 30% of the problem. The building might stand for a year, maybe 2. Then cracks would appear, then the lean, then the collapse. And Brandon Hayes, with his Harvard degree and his expensive suits, couldn't see it. "Hey," Marcus turned. A young executive named Tyler was striding toward him, coffee cup in hand. "You're blocking the hallway. Move." Marcus stepped aside, pulling his cart with him. "Sorry, sir." Tyler didn't slow down. He walked straight past, and as he did, his Italian leather shoe came down hard on Marcus's injured hand. The pain was blinding. Marcus gasped, yanking his hand back. Fresh blood welled through the cuts. "Watch it!" The words escaped before he could stop them. Tyler froze. Slowly, very slowly, he turned around. "What did you say?" The hallway went quiet. 2 other executives stopped walking. A secretary looked up from her desk. Marcus felt his heart hammering. 5 years of invisibility, 5 years of keeping his head down. And now he had broken the cardinal rule. He had spoken. "Did you just speak to me?" Tyler stepped closer, his face twisting with disbelief. "Did the janitor just talk back?" "I apologize, sir. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean what? To have an opinion, to think you matter." Tyler was close now, close enough that Marcus could smell his cologne. "Do you have any idea what's happening today? We're trying to save an $85 million project, and you're worried about your fingers." Marcus stared at the floor, made himself small, said nothing. "That's what I thought." Tyler's lip curled. "Know your place. You push a mop, you empty trash, you don't have thoughts, you don't have opinions, you exist to clean up after people who actually matter." He raised his coffee cup. For one terrible moment, Marcus thought Tyler was going to throw it in his face. Instead, Tyler tipped it deliberately. Hot coffee poured onto the floor, splashing across Marcus's boots, pooling at his feet. "Now clean that up, before you find yourself unemployed." Tyler leaned closer. "People like you are replaceable. Remember that." He walked away, joining the other executives in the conference room. Marcus stood alone in a puddle of coffee mixed with his own blood. From across the hallway, someone was watching. Jasmine Carter. 28 years old. The only black architect at Pinnacle. She'd seen everything from her desk by the window. Their eyes met. Hers were full of anger and apology. His were full of something she couldn't name, something burning. Then she looked away, and Marcus bent down to clean. The mop handle dug into his wounded palm. Every stroke sent fresh pain up his arm. But he kept working, kept moving, kept being invisible. Inside his mind, he was already redesigning the Crescent Tower foundation. The solution unfolded like a flower in sunlight. Beautiful, obvious, perfect, and completely worthless. The bus ride home took 47 minutes. Marcus sat in the back, hands wrapped in paper towels from the Pinnacle bathroom, watching the city change outside dirty windows. Glass towers became brick buildings. Designer stores became bodegas. The people changed too. Suits and dresses became work clothes and tired faces. His stop came in Harlem just as the sun was dying behind the buildings. His apartment building stood on the corner. 6 stories of aging brick. Construction equipment surrounded it now, yellow machines with black arms that looked like weapons. A sign announced future site of luxury condominiums in cheerful letters. Marcus climbed 4 flights of stairs. The elevator hadn't worked in months. The hallway smelled like mildew and old cooking. He reached apartment 4C and turned his key. Darkness. The electricity was off again. He'd known it would be. The final notice came last week. But when you had to choose between power and blood pressure medication, there was no real choice. He navigated by memory to the window where moonlight spilled across his tiny space. The walls told the story of a dream that had died. Architectural sketches everywhere held up with yellowing tape. Newspaper clippings about famous buildings, magazine articles about innovative designs. And below all of it, stacked in neat piles, bills marked in angry red. Final notice, past due, collection pending. Marcus peeled off his blood-stained uniform and examined his hands in the dim light. The cuts were still oozing. He should bandage them properly, but his first aid supplies ran out 2 weeks ago. He cleaned the wounds with cold water and wrapped them in strips torn from an old shirt. It wasn't pretty, but it would do. His refrigerator held half a carton of milk and 3 eggs that were probably past date. He scrambled 2 eggs on his camp stove and ate standing at the counter. While he ate, his eyes kept drifting to the corner, to the small desk where his grandfather's brass compass sat gleaming in the moonlight, to the sketchbook stacked beside it, to the architecture textbooks from Howard University that he still read every night. 5 years ago, he had been 3 months from graduation. 3 months from becoming the architect he'd always dreamed of being. Then his mother called. "Baby, I need you to come home. The doctors found something." Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months to live, maybe less. Treatment wasn't covered by insurance. The bills would be enormous. Marcus made the choice that wasn't really a choice. He sold his car, withdrew from school, cashed out his savings, took 3 jobs, held his mother's hand through chemotherapy and radiation and surgery. He watched her hair fall out. He watched her weight disappear. He watched her smile fade into something tired and afraid. She died on a Tuesday afternoon in April, holding his hand, telling him she was proud of him. She left him $47,000 in debt and a shattered future. He tried to go back to school. Tuition had increased. Credits had expired. Financial aid was gone. Every door closed in his face. So he took the only job he could find. Maintenance worker at Pinnacle Architecture, minimum wage, no benefits. The perfect cruelty of cleaning floors in the building where his dreams should have lived. 5 years later, he was still there. Still invisible. Still bleeding on marble floors while Harvard graduates stole credit for work they couldn't do. Marcus finished his eggs and washed the pan in cold water. Then he lit 3 candles, sat at his desk, and opened his sketchbook. This was his ritual. Every night, no matter how tired, no matter how much his body hurt, he spent at least an hour with his drawings. The only thing that kept him sane. The only thing that reminded him who he really was. Tonight, he didn't draw something new. Tonight, he drew the Crescent Tower. His pencil moved with sure strokes. The image came as clearly as a photograph. The elegant curve of the tower's silhouette. The intricate exterior latticework. The foundation system that was supposed to anchor it to Earth. And the fatal flaw that would bring it all crashing down. He drew the flaw first. The northern support structure exactly as Pinnacle designed it. The stress lines that would develop when coastal winds hit the building. The fracture points, where concrete would crack. The cascade of failures that would follow each one, feeding the next until everything collapsed. Then he drew the solution. His grandfather's compass clicked open in his left hand. He used it to trace perfect arcs measuring angles with an accuracy no straight edge could match. The new support structure took shape. 3 reinforcement struts in a triangular pattern. A redistribution of load-bearing elements channeling stress away from vulnerable points. Simple. Elegant. Perfect. The kind of solution that came from understanding a building not just as structure, but as a living thing that breathed and moved and responded to the world. He worked for 3 hours. By the time he finished, his candles were guttering and his eyes burned with fatigue. But the drawing was complete. He sat back and looked at what he had created. On paper, the Crescent Tower was saved. The flaw was corrected. The building would stand for 100 years. On paper, Marcus Thompson was an architect. But paper didn't pay rent. Paper didn't buy medication. Paper didn't make Harvard graduates listen to janitors. He closed his sketchbook and placed his grandfather's compass on top. The brass caught the dying candlelight. "Who would ever believe someone like me could design buildings?" he whispered. "When I can barely keep a roof over my head." The silence didn't answer. A knock on the door made him jump. Mrs. Dorothy Williams stood in the hallway. 72 years old, sharp eyes, sharper tongue. She'd lived in this building for 40 years. "Power's out," she said, without greeting. "I know. Water's getting cut tomorrow." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What?" "Got the notice this afternoon. 8 a.m. tomorrow, they're shutting it off for the whole building. Maintenance, they're calling it." She snorted. "Maintenance, my behind. They're trying to push us out. They can do whatever they want. They've got lawyers, we've got nothing." She studied his face. "You look terrible. When's the last time you ate a real meal?" "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Nobody in this building is fine." She stepped past him into his apartment, her eyes sweeping across the walls. She stopped when she saw the architectural drawings. "What's all this?" Marcus hesitated. "Just a hobby." "Hobby?" She moved closer, flashlight from her phone illuminating the sketches. This isn't hobby work. This is professional. Her finger hovered over his modified foundation design. You're an architect. Almost was. Had to drop out. To do what? Take care of my mother. She had cancer. Mrs. Williams was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. My husband had cancer 20 years ago. I know what that costs. She looked at him. You work at that architecture firm downtown, don't you? The fancy one with the glass building. Pinnacle, yes ma'am. As an architect. As a janitor. She absorbed this without visible reaction. Then she pointed at his Crescent Tower sketch. This building. I've seen it on the news. The big project with the problems. Marcus nodded. And you fixed it in your little apartment with candles. The solution isn't complicated. Anyone with proper training should have seen it. But they didn't, and you did. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A camera, compact, digital. My nephew gave me this, said I should document everything happening in this building. The harassment, the utility shutoffs. Evidence for lawyers, he said. She pressed it into Marcus's hands. But I think maybe you need it more than me. Mrs. Williams, I can't. Can't what? Can't fight? Can't make them see you. Her eyes were fierce. Baby, I've been black in America for 72 years. I know what it means to be invisible. I know what it costs to stay quiet and small and safe. And I know that sometimes staying safe is just another way of dying. Marcus looked at the camera in his hands. Whatever you are, Mrs. Williams said, it's more than what they've made you become. Maybe it's time you remembered that. She turned toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. The company buying this building, the development company pushing us all out, what about it? It's called Whitmore Development. Same Whitmore who runs that architecture firm where you work. She watched his face carefully. Same man who's trying to take your home is the same man who's taking everything else from you. She left him standing there with a camera in his hand and fire in his chest. Whitmore, the man who had thrown the model at him, the man who had made him kneel in his own blood, the same man was destroying his home. Marcus stood at his window and watched the construction equipment below. The excavators, the bulldozers, the wrecking ball waiting like a predator. All of it belonged to Whitmore. The rage that rose in him was unlike anything he'd felt in years. It burned through his chest, up his throat behind his eyes. Hot and bright and dangerous. For 5 years he had swallowed his anger, pushed it down, buried it under survival and necessity and the simple mathematics of staying alive. But now the man who humiliated him at work was also the man trying to throw him into the street. There was nowhere left to run, nowhere left to hide. The walls were closing in from every side. Marcus looked at the camera in his hand. Then he looked at his sketchbook. Then he made a decision. He stayed awake all night. By dawn he had documented everything. His design process, his calculations, every page of his sketchbook filmed by candlelight with his grandfather's compass visible in each frame. His voice narrated each modification, each solution, each innovation. He filmed himself solving problems that Pinnacle's best architects couldn't crack. He recorded every equation, every stress calculation, every load distribution formula. When he finished with the Crescent Tower foundation, he kept going. The seismic reinforcement that Brandon and his team hadn't even considered. The materials optimization that could reduce costs by 15%. The comprehensive structural analysis that would make the building stronger than anything Pinnacle had ever designed. All of it documented, all of it time-stamped, all of it proof. At 6 a.m. the water stopped flowing from his tap, right on schedule. Marcus took his blood pressure medication dry, choking down the pills with nothing to wash them down. His head was pounding, his hands were shaking. He hadn't eaten since yesterday's eggs. But he was ready. He dressed in his maintenance uniform one final time, packed his sketchbook, his camera, and his grandfather's compass into a small bag that he hid in his cleaning cart. Then he walked outside into the morning light. The construction equipment had multiplied overnight. Workers in hard hats were already measuring and marking. A foreman was pointing at different sections of the building, making notes on a clipboard. One of them noticed Marcus. Hey, you still live here? For now? Well, not for long. Whole block's coming down in 2 weeks. The foreman shrugged. Progress, right? Marcus didn't answer. He just kept walking toward the bus stop. The ride to Pinnacle felt different today. The city looked different. The faces around him seemed sharper, more real. Or maybe he was the one who had changed. For 5 years, Marcus Thompson had been invisible. He had accepted it, embraced it even. Invisibility meant safety. It meant survival. It meant waking up tomorrow. But tomorrow was disappearing anyway. His home was disappearing. His health was failing. His future had already vanished years ago. What was left to protect, the bus stopped outside Pinnacle Architecture's gleaming glass tower. Marcus stepped off and stood on the sidewalk looking up at the building where he had spent 5 years cleaning floors. Somewhere in there, Brandon Hayes was taking credit for work he didn't understand. Somewhere in there, Richard Whitmore was counting his money while families lost their homes. Somewhere in there, the Crescent Tower project was falling apart because no one would listen to the people who actually had answers. Marcus touched his grandfather's compass through the fabric of his bag. "Find true north," his grandfather had said, "and you'll never be lost." He'd been lost for 5 years, wandering in a wilderness of invisibility and silence, surviving but not living, existing but not mattering. Not anymore. Marcus Thompson walked through the doors of Pinnacle Architecture with his head up and his eyes forward. Today would be different. Today they would see him, whether they wanted to or not. The lobby was chaos when Marcus arrived. Executives rushed between offices. Phones rang constantly. Voices echoed off marble walls with barely contained panic. The Sheikh's ultimatum had set off an earthquake. Marcus collected his cleaning cart from the maintenance closet and began his rounds. But today he paid attention differently. Today he was gathering intelligence. Outside the main conference room, he stopped to empty a trash bin. Through the glass, he could see the entire senior team clustered around the table. Whitmore stood at the head face red, voice raised. "This is unacceptable," Whitmore slammed his palm on the table. "We have 29 days to solve this problem, and I'm looking at a room full of people who can't tell me how." "Sir, we're exploring multiple approaches," James Chen began. "Approaches," Whitmore cut him off. "I don't want approaches, I want solutions." The Sheik was very clear. If we don't fix this foundation issue, we lose $85 million. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what happens to this company? What happens to your jobs? Silence. Brandon Hayes stepped forward. "Mr. Whitmore, if I may, I've been analyzing the problem from multiple angles, and I believe I'm close to a breakthrough." "Close isn't good enough, Brandon." "I understand, sir, but the northern support structure presents unique challenges. The coastal wind patterns create lateral stress that's difficult to account for without compromising the aesthetic design." Marcus's grip tightened on his mop. Brandon was describing the problem correctly, but his solutions, the ones Marcus had seen on the whiteboard yesterday, were completely wrong. "How much time do you need?" Whitmore asked. "A week, maybe 2. "You have 3 days. After that, I'm bringing in outside consultants." Whitmore turned to the room. "Everyone else, I want alternatives on my desk by tomorrow morning. No excuses." The meeting broke up. Executives scattered in different directions. Marcus resumed mopping, keeping his head down as they passed. Jasmine Carter was the last to leave. She walked slowly, clutching a folder to her chest, her face troubled. As she passed Marcus, she slowed. "Are you okay?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I saw what happened yesterday with Tyler." Marcus kept mopping. "I'm fine, ma'am." "That wasn't right, what he did to you." "It's not the first time." Jasmine was quiet for a moment. "Then I know what it's like, being overlooked, being dismissed." She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "Brandon took credit for my work last month, a cost reduction strategy I developed. He presented it to the board as his own idea." "See." Marcus looked up at her. "Why didn't you say anything? Who would have listened?" Bitterness crept into her voice. "He's Whitmore's golden boy, Harvard degree, family connections, and I'm just..." She trailed off. "Just what?" "Just someone who has to work twice as hard to get half the recognition." She shook her head. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be dumping this on you. You have your own problems." "Ms. Carter," Marcus stopped mopping. "That foundation issue they're trying to solve, the northern support structure." Her eyebrows rose. "What about it?" He hesitated. 5 years of caution warred with something new, something that felt like hope. "I might have some ideas," he said carefully, "if anyone ever wanted to hear them." Jasmine stared at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then footsteps approached, and the moment shattered. "Jasmine," Brandon's voice echoed down the hallway. "Whitmore wants us in his office, now." She turned to go, then looked back at Marcus. "What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus Thompson." "Marcus." She nodded once. "I'd like to hear those ideas sometime." Then she was gone, following Brandon down the hall, leaving Marcus alone with his mop and his secrets. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of cleaning and watching. Marcus emptied trash bins in strategic locations, wiped surfaces near doorways where conversations happened, made himself useful in rooms where plans were being discussed. Nobody noticed him. Nobody ever did. But he noticed everything. He noticed that Brandon's breakthrough was actually a slight modification of an approach that had already been rejected twice. He noticed that the outside consultants Whitmore mentioned were from a firm known more for politics than engineering. He noticed that Jasmine had sketched something on a napkin during lunch, something that looked remarkably similar to his own solution before crumpling it up and throwing it away. He rescued the napkin from the trash when no one was looking. She was on the right track. The triangular reinforcement pattern, the redistribution of load-bearing points. She understood the problem, but her solution was incomplete. She was missing the secondary modifications that would make it work. The seismic considerations, the materials optimization. If she had access to his complete design, she could fill in those gaps. If she had access to his complete design, she could present it as her own. And maybe, just maybe, the right solution would finally see the light of day, even if Marcus Thompson never got credit for it. The idea formed slowly throughout the afternoon. It was dangerous, probably foolish, but it refused to leave his mind. At 5 p.m., most of the executives headed home. The pressure of the deadline had worn everyone down. Even Whitmore left early, barking orders into his phone as he walked to the elevator. But Jasmine stayed. Marcus found her in her office, surrounded by papers and blueprints, head in her hands. She looked exhausted. He knocked softly on the doorframe. She looked up, surprised. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" "Cleaning the offices." He held up his trash bag. "But I also—" He hesitated. "I found something you might want to see." He reached into his cart and pulled out the modified Dubai Tower model he'd salvaged from the trash 2 days ago. He'd wrapped it carefully in cleaning cloths to hide it. Now he unwrapped it and set it on her desk. Jasmine's eyes went wide. "What is this, the Crescent Tower, with a modified foundation design?" She leaned forward, examining the model. Her fingers traced the changes to the northern support structure, the triangular reinforcement pattern, the redistributed load points. "This is—" She looked up at him. "This is exactly what I was trying to figure out. How did you—" "There's more." Marcus pulled a folded paper from his pocket, his complete solution condensed onto a single page. Foundation modifications, seismic reinforcement, materials optimization, no name, no signature, just the answer to the problem that was destroying this company. Jasmine took the paper with trembling hands. She scanned it quickly, her engineering training kicking in. "These calculations are correct," she breathed. "The lateral stress distribution, the integration points, the load-bearing ratios. This would work. This would actually work." "I know." She stared at him. How do you know this?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he made a decision. "I was 3 months from graduating with an architecture degree when my mother got sick. I had to drop out to take care of her. After she died, I couldn't afford to go back, so I took this job." He gestured at his uniform. "But I never stopped studying, never stopped learning, never stopped designing." Jasmine's face changed as she understood. "You're not just a janitor. I'm whatever I have to be to survive." He nodded at the paper in her hands. "That solution can save the Crescent Tower. It can save this company. It can save jobs." "But no one would believe it came from the cleaning staff." Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. "No, they wouldn't. That's why it needs to come from you. Me, I can't take credit for your work." "Why not? Brandon does it all the time." The words hung in the air between them. Jasmine's face flushed. "That's different. That's wrong, I know, but this isn't about credit. It's about getting the right answer to the right people before that building falls down and kills someone." Marcus leaned forward. "You're the only person in this company who might actually listen, who might actually understand. And you have access to people I'll never get to talk to." Jasmine looked at the paper, then at the model, then at Marcus. "I can't just present this as my own work. It's not right." "Then present it as anonymous. Say you found it on your desk. Say it appeared overnight." He shrugged. "Whatever story you need to tell, just get it in front of someone who can use it." "And what about you?" Marcus thought about his empty apartment, his failing health, his eviction notice, the construction equipment surrounding his building. "I'll figure something out. I always do." Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick. "You know they won't thank you. Even if this works, even if this saves everything, they'll never know it was you." "I know. And you're okay with that." Marcus picked up his trash bag and slung it over his shoulder. "Ms. Carter, I've been invisible for 5 years. One more day won't kill me." He turned and walked out of her office, leaving the model and the solution behind. Behind him, he heard Jasmine pick up her phone. "Security, this is Jasmine Carter in engineering. I need to report something unusual. Someone left a modified architectural model on my desk." The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Marcus sat in the back watching the city lights blur past, trying not to think about what he'd done. He had given away his solution, his best work, the answer that could have proven he was more than what they saw when they looked at him, and he'd handed it to someone else without asking for anything in return. Was it noble or just stupid? He wasn't sure anymore. The bus stopped and he stepped off into the Harlem night. The air was cool, the streets were quiet, the construction equipment around his building hulked in the darkness like sleeping giants. He climbed the stairs to his apartment, each step heavier than the last. The hallway was dark. Most of his neighbors had already fled. At his door, he found a note taped to the frame. "Final notice building will be demolished in 10 days. All remaining residents must vacate immediately. Failure to comply will result in legal action." 10 days, not 2 weeks, not 72 hours. 10 days. Marcus crumpled the notice and pushed open his door. His apartment was dark, cold, empty. Everything he owned could fit in 2 suitcases, so he sat down at his desk without turning on the camp light, without lighting candles. He just sat in the darkness, his grandfather's compass cool in his palm. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said out loud. "I don't know if any of this matters." The silence didn't answer. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Jasmine. I showed the model to my supervisor. He's intrigued but skeptical. Brandon is already trying to claim he developed the approach independently, meeting tomorrow to discuss. Thank you for trusting me. I won't forget what you did." Marcus stared at the message. Brandon was claiming credit. Of course he was. That was what Brandon did. That was what people like Brandon always did. But Jasmine knew the truth, and she wasn't going to stay quiet. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it was a start. Or maybe it would all fall apart and Marcus would end up homeless and jobless and forgotten. Either way, he had made his choice. He set his phone down and picked up his sketchbook. In the darkness, he couldn't see the pages, but he didn't need to. He knew every line by heart. 5 years of work, 5 years of dreams, 5 years of hoping that someday, somehow, someone would see him. Tomorrow he would find out if that day had finally come, or if he had just thrown away the last thing he had left. Marcus lay down on his narrow bed and closed his eyes. Sleep came slowly, fitfully filled with dreams of towers rising and falling and rising again. When he woke, it was still dark. But something had changed. He could feel it in his bones, in his blood, in the weight of the compass still clutched in his hand. Today would be different. Today, everything would change. Morning came at 5:47 a.m. with Marcus's phone buzzing against his chest. He grabbed at heart, already pounding. 3 messages from Jasmine. The first sent at 11:43 p.m. "Brandon saw the model in my office. He's asking questions." The second at 2:17 a.m. "He took photos of everything. I think he's going to claim it as his own. I'm so sorry." The third at 5:31 a.m. "Emergency meeting at 8. Whitmore wants to see the foundation solution. Brandon is presenting. Please don't hate me." Marcus sat up in the darkness. His head was pounding. His hands were shaking. He hadn't eaten since yesterday's eggs. But the hunger didn't matter. The pain didn't matter. Brandon Hayes was about to present Marcus's work as his own, and there was nothing Marcus could do to stop it. He dressed quickly in his maintenance uniform, fingers fumbling with buttons. His grandfather's compass went into his pocket. The camera Mrs. Williams had given him went into his bag. Evidence. He needed evidence. If Brandon was going to steal from him, Marcus would make sure there was proof of the theft. The bus ride downtown felt endless. Every red light was an eternity. Every stop picked up passengers too slowly. Marcus checked his phone obsessively. No new messages from Jasmine. No updates on what was happening inside Pinnacle's glass tower. He arrived at 7:38 a.m. earlier than usual. The lobby was already buzzing with activity. Executives rushed past him without a glance, their faces tight with tension. Marcus grabbed his cleaning cart and headed for the executive floor. He needed to be in that meeting. He needed to see what Brandon would do. The conference room doors were closed when he arrived. Through the glass walls, he could see the senior team gathering. Whitmore at the head of the table. Brandon standing near a presentation screen. Jasmine in the corner, her face pale. And on the table, Marcus's modified model. His design, his solution, with Brandon Hayes' name written on a card beside it. Marcus's hands tightened on his mop handle until his knuckles went white. The cuts from 2 days ago screamed in protest. He didn't care. He positioned himself outside the conference room, pretending to clean the floor. The door was slightly ajar. He could hear everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon's voice carried the confidence of a man who had never doubted himself. After extensive analysis, I've identified the solution to our foundation problem. He clicked a remote and images appeared on the screen. Marcus's drawings. Marcus's calculations. Photographed from the papers he'd left with Jasmine. The key insight is the triangular reinforcement pattern at the integration points. By redistributing the load-bearing elements and adding 3 strategic support struts, we can eliminate the lateral stress vulnerability while maintaining the aesthetic design the Sheikh specified. Whitmore leaned forward. And you developed this approach independently? Yes, sir. I've been working on variations of this concept for weeks. Last night, everything finally came together. Lies. All lies. Marcus's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. The calculations are impressive, James Chen said, studying the screen. But what about seismic considerations? The Sheikh specifically mentioned the Istanbul collapse. Brandon hesitated, just for a second, but Marcus caught it. The seismic reinforcement is still being refined, but the foundation solution addresses the primary concern. That's not good enough. Whitmore's voice sharpened. The Sheikh wants comprehensive solutions, not partial answers. Sir, I assure you. Mr. Whitmore. Jasmine's voice cut through the room. If I may. Everyone turned to look at her. Brandon's expression flickered with something between annoyance and fear. What is it, Jasmine? She stood up, her hands trembling slightly. I need to disclose something. That model on the table didn't originate with Brandon. The room went silent. Brandon's face went pale. Jasmine, what are you... It appeared on my desk last night, anonymously, along with a complete solution that includes seismic reinforcement parameters. I reported it to security. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. Anonymous? Someone left a complete architectural solution on your desk and you didn't think to mention this at the start of the meeting. I was going to, sir, but Brandon took the model from my office before I could... That's not what happened. Brandon stepped forward, his voice rising. Jasmine showed me the model last night. She was confused by it. I recognized immediately that it was similar to the approach I'd been developing. Obviously, someone saw my preliminary work and tried to refine it. That's not true, Jasmine's composure cracked. You photographed everything and left before I could stop you. This is ridiculous. Brandon turned to Whitmore with practiced confidence. Sir, I've been working on this project for weeks. Jasmine is clearly upset that she didn't solve the problem first. I understand the pressure everyone is under, but making accusations... Enough. Whitmore held up his hand. I don't care who came up with the solution. I care whether it works. Brandon, can you explain the seismic calculations? Brandon swallowed. As I said, those are still being... Can you explain them or not? Silence stretched across the conference room. Marcus watched through the glass as Brandon's confidence finally faltered. I need more time to review the complete parameters. Then you don't understand your own solution. Whitmore's voice was cold. Jasmine, you said there were seismic calculations included with the anonymous delivery. Yes, sir. A complete structural analysis. Where are those documents now? Jasmine glanced toward the door, toward Marcus. Their eyes met for just a second. I have copies at my desk, sir. Get them, now. As Jasmine hurried out of the conference room, she passed within inches of Marcus. She pressed something into his hand without breaking stride. A folded note. Marcus didn't look at it. He just kept mopping invisible, irrelevant, exactly what they expected him to be. But his heart was racing. The meeting continued for another hour. Marcus listened to every word while pretending to clean the same stretch of floor. Jasmine returned with the complete calculations, the seismic analysis, the materials optimization, everything Marcus had given her. Whitmore studied the documents with growing interest. James Chen ran numbers on his laptop and confirmed the structural integrity. Even the skeptics in the room had to admit the solution was elegant, and Brandon Hayes stood in the corner, watching his stolen glory slip away. This is remarkable work, Whitmore finally said, but I want to know who created it. Anonymous deliveries don't happen in architecture. Someone with serious expertise produced this solution. Sir, I've been trying to trace the origin, Jasmine said, but there's no identification, no signature, just the work itself. Well, whoever they are, they understand structural engineering better than anyone on my team. Whitmore's eyes swept the room. And that troubles me. If someone with this level of skill is working anonymously, why aren't they working for us? Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. Marcus finished mopping and pushed his cart toward the elevator. The folded note was burning a hole in his palm. In the maintenance closet alone with the smell of cleaning supplies, he finally read it. I know it was you. Meet me on the roof at noon. We need to talk. J, the roof. Marcus checked his phone. It was 10:17 a.m. 2 hours to decide whether to trust someone. 2 hours to decide whether to step out of the shadows. 2 hours to decide who he wanted to be. He spent those 2 hours doing his job. Cleaning bathrooms, emptying trash, wiping surfaces. The repetitive work gave him time to think. What would happen if he met Jasmine? What would she want from him? What would she do with the truth? And what would happen if he didn't meet her? If he stayed invisible forever? If he let Brandon Hayes take credit and never said a word? The building would be saved. Lives would be protected. The solution would work regardless of whose name was attached to it. Was that enough? For 5 years, Marcus had told himself that survival was enough. That getting through each day was enough. That keeping his head down and his mouth shut was enough. But Mrs. Williams's words kept echoing in his mind. Sometimes staying safe is just another way of dying. At 11:47 a.m., Marcus made his decision. He took the service elevator to the top floor, then the maintenance stairs to the roof access door. The handle was cold under his injured hand. He pushed it open and stepped into the sunlight. Jasmine was already there, standing near the edge, looking out at the city. She turned when she heard the door. You came. You knew it was me. Marcus crossed the roof toward her. How? The compass. She smiled slightly. In the video documentation, I recognized it from when you knocked it off your cart last week. That antique brass compass with the worn edges. Marcus's hand instinctively touched his pocket. You saw the videos. Last night, I couldn't sleep, so I started examining the model more closely. The craftsmanship was too good to be random, too precise. So I checked the security footage. She paused. I saw you take the damaged prototype from the trash 2 days ago. His stomach dropped. Security footage. Don't worry, I erased it. Nobody else knows. She turned to face him fully. But I need to understand, Marcus. Who are you, really? So he told her. He told her about Howard University, about his mother's cancer, about the impossible choice between education and family. He told her about the medical debt, the failed attempts to return to school, the slow descent into a life he never planned. He told her about cleaning toilets in the building where his dreams should have lived, about watching people with half his talent succeed while he remained invisible. He told her everything. When he finished, Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. Tears glistened in her eyes. 5 years, she finally said. You've been working here for 5 years, and nobody ever thought to ask if the janitor might have ideas. People see the uniform. They don't see the person wearing it. That's not an excuse. That's a failure. She shook her head. I've been so focused on my own struggles, my own fight for recognition, that I never thought about who else might be fighting the same battle. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have looked. She wiped her eyes. Marcus, your work is extraordinary. The seismic analysis alone would take most engineers weeks to develop. You did it in a few hours with candlelight and a brass compass. I've had 5 years to study, 5 years with nothing to do but learn. And now what? You give your work away, let Brandon take credit, stay invisible forever. The building will be safe. That's what matters. That's not what matters. Her voice rose with sudden intensity. You matter. Your talent matters. Your future matters. My future ended when my mother got sick. No, Jasmine stepped closer, her eyes fierce. No, it didn't. Your future got delayed. There's a difference. She grabbed his arm. Marcus, I'm not going to let Brandon steal this from you. I'm not going to let Whitmore ignore what you've done. You saved this project. You deserve recognition. And how exactly are you going to make that happen? Go to Whitmore and tell him his janitor is a better architect than his Harvard Golden Boy. Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Marcus stared at her. You're serious? I've never been more serious about anything. She pulled out her phone. I still have your video documentation. I have the security footage showing you with the model. I have the timestamps proving you created this solution before Brandon even saw it. And you think Whitmore will care? I think Whitmore cares about one thing, money. The Sheikh's $85 million. If he finds out the solution came from someone he's been paying minimum wage to clean floors, he'll either be furious or intrigued. Either way, he'll pay attention. Marcus felt something shift inside him. Something that had been dead for a long time, stirring back to life. Hope. Dangerous, painful, terrifying hope. "What do you need me to do?" Jasmine smiled. "Nothing yet. Just keep doing your job. Stay invisible for one more day. I need time to build a case that even Whitmore can't ignore. And if it doesn't work, then we're both probably fired, but at least we'll go down fighting." She squeezed his arm. "You've been silent long enough, Marcus. It's time someone heard you." She walked toward the roof access door, then paused. "One more thing. That development company buying up buildings in Harlem, the one pushing out families and cutting utilities, Whitmore Development, I know. The demolition is scheduled to accelerate. My uncle works for the city planning office. He says Whitmore is trying to fast-track everything before residents can organize legal resistance." She met his eyes. "You're running out of time, in more ways than one." The door closed behind her, leaving Marcus alone on the roof with the city spread out below him. Running out of time. The words echoed in his mind as he made his way back down to the maintenance closet. His apartment would be demolished in days. His health was failing without proper medication. His job security depended on staying invisible in a company that had just been shaken by his anonymous contribution. And somewhere in this building, Brandon Hayes was plotting to make sure he never got credit for anything. Running out of time indeed. The afternoon brought chaos. Marcus was cleaning the East Wing bathroom when he heard shouting from down the hall. He recognized Brandon's voice immediately. "This is sabotage. Someone is trying to destroy my career." He moved closer, her mop in hand, invisible as always. Brandon was in his office with James Chen and two other senior engineers. His face was red. His expensive suit was rumpled. He looked like a man watching his empire crumble. Brandon calmed down. James Chen held up his hands. "No one is accusing you of anything. Jasmine is accusing me she told Whitmore the solution wasn't mine. She said it appeared anonymously. That's different from an accusation." "It's the same thing." Brandon kicked his trash can across the room. "I've been working on that foundation problem for weeks. I was close to a breakthrough, and then this mysterious solution appears and everyone thinks I'm a fraud." "Brandon, if you developed the approach independently, then you should be able to explain the seismic calculations. Walk us through it." Silence. Brandon's jaw worked. His hands clenched at his sides. "The seismic analysis is complicated. I need time to review it properly." "You've had all morning." "I've been dealing with accusations all morning." Brandon's voice cracked. "Someone is setting me up, someone who wants to see me fail, and I'm going to find out who." Marcus kept mopping, his heart beating faster with every word. Brandon was paranoid, desperate, dangerous. If he started looking for the real source of the solution, how long before he found Marcus? How long before the invisible janitor became a target, Brandon? James Chen's voice softened. "I've known you for 3 years. I know you're talented, but if someone else developed this solution, trying to claim credit will only make things worse. Whitmore respects honesty. He doesn't respect deception." "I'm not being deceptive. I'm being framed." The conversation continued, but Marcus had heard enough. He pushed his cart away from Brandon's office and headed for the elevator. He needed to think. He needed a plan. He needed to stay alive long enough to see this through. At 4:23 p.m., Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "I know what you did. Meet me in the parking garage. Level B2. Come alone." His blood went cold. Brandon. It had to be Brandon. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Every instinct screamed danger. Every survival skill had developed over 5 years, told him to ignore it, to stay invisible, to let whatever was happening play out without him. But he was done being invisible. He took the service elevator to the parking garage and walked down the concrete ramp to level B2. His footsteps echoed off the walls. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A figure was waiting near the back, leaning against a concrete pillar. Not Brandon. Tyler. The young executive who had poured coffee on him 2 days ago. The one who had stepped on his injured hand. The one who had told him to know his place. "You came." Tyler pushed off the pillar. "I wasn't sure you would." "What do you want?" "To give you a warning." Tyler walked closer, his expensive shoes clicking on concrete. "I saw you outside the conference room this morning. You were there during the whole meeting, listening." Marcus said nothing. "Brandon thinks someone is setting him up. He's right." Tyler stopped 3 feet away. "I don't know who left that solution on Jasmine's desk, but I know it wasn't anyone on the architecture team. The skill level is too high. The approach is too elegant." "What does that have to do with me?" Tyler smiled. "I did some digging. Marcus Thompson, Enrolled at Howard University 6 years ago. Architecture major, 4.0 GPA. Withdrew 3 months before graduation. He paused. Your mother was diagnosed with cancer around the same time. Died 11 months later. The blood drained from Marcus's face. You looked into me. I look into everyone. Tyler shrugged. It's how I survived this long in corporate America. Information is power. What do you want? To warn you. If I found this information, Brandon will too. And when he does, he'll destroy you. Tyler leaned closer. Brandon's father golfs with Whitmore. They've known each other for 20 years. You think anyone in this company is going to take the janitor's word over the Harvard graduate with family connections? I haven't said anything. You don't have to. Jasmine is saying it for you. Tyler's smile faded. She's going to present evidence to Whitmore tomorrow. Video documentation, security footage, proof that you created the solution before Brandon ever saw it. Marcus's heart stopped. How do you know that? Because I've been watching her too, and because I intercepted her email to Whitmore's assistant requesting a private meeting. Tyler pulled out his phone. One tap and I send this information to Brandon. He'll know exactly who to target. Your career such as it is will be over. Your reputation will be destroyed. And when Whitmore finds out his janitor has been secretly designing buildings, he'll have you arrested for corporate espionage. I haven't stolen anything. Doesn't matter. Perception is reality in this world. Tyler paused. But I'm willing to keep this information to myself. For a price. Marcus felt sick. What price? The complete solution. All of it. The foundation design, the seismic analysis, the materials optimization, everything you've developed. Tyler's eyes glittered. Brandon is finished. Even his father can't save him from this humiliation, but someone needs to take credit for the solution. Someone needs to be the hero. You. Me. Tyler smiled. I'll present the solution to the sheikh myself. I'll take the promotion that should have been Brandon's, and you'll go back to your mop and your cleaning cart exactly where you belong. And if I refuse, then I send everything to Brandon, tonight. Tyler checked his watch. You have until 9 p.m. to decide. That gives you about 4 hours. He walked away, footsteps echoing off concrete, leaving Marcus alone in the parking garage with an impossible choice. Give up his work and stay invisible forever, or fight back and risk losing everything. Marcus stood in the parking garage for a long time after Tyler left. His hands were shaking. His chest was tight. The familiar symptoms of stress and rising blood pressure that he'd been ignoring for days. He needed his medication. He needed food. He needed sleep. But more than anything, he needed a plan. He took the elevator back up to the lobby and walked out of Pinnacle Architecture into the evening air. The sun was setting behind the buildings, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Beautiful, indifferent. The city didn't care about Marcus Thompson. It didn't care about stolen ideas or impossible choices or invisible men trying to be seen. He walked to a small park 2 blocks away and sat on a bench. His phone showed 5:17 p.m., less than 4 hours until Tyler's deadline. He could give in, hand over his work, let Tyler take credit, go back to mopping floors and cleaning toilets until his building was demolished and his health finally failed. Or he could fight. But fighting meant exposure. Fighting meant risking everything. Fighting meant stepping out of the shadows and into a world that had never wanted him. His phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. Meeting with Whitmore scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. I have everything we need. This is really happening. How are you feeling? Marcus stared at the message. How was he feeling? Terrified, exhausted, hopeful, desperate, alive. For the first time in 5 years, he felt alive. He typed a response. Someone knows. Tyler Mitchell. He's blackmailing me. Wants me to hand over the solution in exchange for silence. The response came immediately. What, are you serious? Deadline is 9 p.m. tonight. Don't do anything. Stay where you are. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, Jasmine found him on the park bench. She sat down beside him, breathing hard from running. Tell me everything. So he did. The parking garage, Tyler's threats, the impossible choice. When he finished, Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. Then she started to laugh. Marcus stared at her. What's funny? Tyler Mitchell. She shook her head. Of all the people to try blackmail, do you know who his father is? No. Senator Richard Mitchell, head of the Senate Ethics Committee. Her smile widened. Tyler's entire career depends on his family's reputation. If it got out that he tried to steal intellectual property from a struggling maintenance worker to advance his own career, he'd be destroyed. His whole family would be destroyed. Jasmine pulled out her phone. We need to record everything. Build our own leverage. How? Call him. Tell him you want to negotiate. I'll record the conversation. She met his eyes. Can you do that? Can you pretend to cooperate while we gather evidence? Marcus thought about 5 years of pretending. 5 years of hiding who he really was. 5 years of playing a role that had slowly been killing him. Yes, he said. I can do that. At 8:43 p.m., Marcus called Tyler. I've made my decision. Good. Tyler's voice was smooth, confident. I knew you'd see reason. Meet me at Pinnacle, loading dock entrance. Bring everything. I have conditions. You're not in a position to have conditions. Hear me out. Marcus kept his voice steady. I want assurance that you won't reveal my background to anyone. I want my job protected, and I want to know exactly how you plan to present the solution to Whitmore. Silence on the other end. Fine, Tyler finally said. We can discuss terms. Loading dock. 20 minutes. He hung up. Jasmine was already recording on her phone. Perfect. I got all of that. Now we just need him to admit what he's doing when you meet face to face. And if he doesn't, then we improvise. She handed him a small device. Wireless microphone. Clip it inside your collar. I'll be in my car in the parking structure recording everything. Marcus took the device. His hands were steady now. The fear had transformed into something else. Something sharper. What if this doesn't work? Then we're both probably unemployed by tomorrow. Jasmine smiled. But at least we'll go down swinging. The loading dock was dark and empty at 9 p.m. Marcus waited near the service entrance, the microphone hidden in his collar, his grandfather's compass heavy in his pocket. Footsteps approached. Tyler emerged from the shadows, Shadow's briefcase in hand. You have the documents. First, the terms. Marcus kept his voice calm. I want to understand exactly what happens after I hand this over. Simple. I present the solution to Whitmore tomorrow. I get the credit. You get to keep your pathetic little job and your pathetic little life. Tyler smiled. Everyone wins. And Jasmine, she knows where the solution came from. Jasmine will be dealt with. I have information about her that she wouldn't want made public. Tyler's smile widened. Everyone has secrets, Marcus. The trick is knowing which ones to exploit. So you're blackmailing both of us. I'm managing the situation. There's a difference. Tyler held out his hand. Now, the documents. Marcus reached into his bag. His fingers touched his sketchbook. His life's work. Everything he'd created in 5 years of darkness. Why are you doing this? He asked. You're already successful. You have connections. You have opportunity. Why steal from people who have nothing? Because that's how the game works. Tyler's eyes were cold. My father didn't become a senator by playing fair. He became a senator by eliminating competition. I learned from the best. And you don't care who you hurt. I care about winning. Everything else is negotiable. Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you. For what? For being honest. He pulled his hand out of the bag, empty. I needed to hear you say it, for the record. Tyler's face changed. What? You're being recorded, Tyler. Everything you just said. The blackmail, the threats, your plan to steal intellectual property. Marcus stepped back. I'm sure your father, the head of the Senate Ethics Committee, will be very interested in this recording. Tyler's face went white. You're bluffing. I'm not. Marcus touched his collar. Wireless microphone. A friend is listening to every word. For a moment, Tyler stood frozen. Then his expression twisted into something ugly. You think you can threaten me? You're a janitor, a nobody, your word against mine. Who's going to believe you? Everyone, when they hear the recording. Marcus met his eyes. Check your phone? Tyler, Jasmine just sent the audio file to your father's office email, along with a detailed explanation of what his son has been doing. Tyler's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face crumbled. No. He stumbled backward. This can't be happening. This isn't how it's supposed to go. It's exactly how it's supposed to go. Marcus stepped closer. You thought I was powerless because I clean toilets. You thought I was worthless because I don't have a degree. But I've been surviving in a world that's been trying to crush me for 5 years. I know how to fight. I know how to endure. And I know that people like you always underestimate people like me. Tyler's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and went even paler. That's probably your father, Marcus said. You should answer it. Tyler stared at him for a long moment. Then without a word, he turned and ran. His footsteps echoed off the concrete walls, fading into the darkness. Marcus stood alone in the loading dock, breathing hard, his heart pounding with adrenaline and triumph. His phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. Got everything. Tyler is finished, but we're not done yet. Tomorrow we face Whitmore. Tomorrow. The word hung in his mind as he walked home through the dark city streets. Tomorrow everything would change, for better or worse. His bus stop was empty at this hour. Marcus sat on the bench and closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion finally wash over him. He had won this battle. Tyler was neutralized. The immediate threat was gone. But the war was just beginning. Tomorrow Jasmine would present evidence to Whitmore. Tomorrow the truth would come out. Tomorrow Marcus Thompson would have to decide whether to step out of the shadows forever. The bus came. He climbed aboard and rode through the sleeping city toward Harlem. His building was dark when he arrived. The construction equipment had multiplied again. More machines, more signs, more evidence of the demolition that was coming. He climbed the stairs to his apartment and pushed open the door. Darkness. Silence. The smell of empty rooms and broken dreams. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, Marcus Thompson didn't feel invisible. Tonight, he felt like someone who had finally started to fight back. He sat at his desk without lighting candles, without opening his sketchbook. He just sat in the darkness, his grandfather's compass cool in his palm. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, he said out loud. I don't know if this will work, but I'm done hiding. I'm done being invisible. Whatever happens tomorrow, at least I'll face it standing up. The silence didn't answer, but for the first time in 5 years, that was okay. Marcus set the compass on his desk and lay down on his narrow bed. Tomorrow would bring Whitmore. Tomorrow would bring truth. Tomorrow would bring consequences that he couldn't predict and couldn't control. But tonight, for the first time in a very long time, Marcus Thompson slept without fear. Marcus woke at 5:14 a.m. to the sound of his phone buzzing. A text from Jasmine. Meeting moved up. Whitmore wants to see us at 8 a.m. The Sheikh is flying in early. Something happened. His heart slammed against his ribs. He typed back. What happened? Don't know yet. Get here as soon as you can. Use the main entrance. I left a visitor badge at reception under the name Michael Turner. Michael Turner. A fake name. A disguise within a disguise. Marcus got out of bed and looked at his maintenance uniform hanging on the back of the door. The gray fabric that had defined him for 5 years. The costume of invisibility. Not today? He opened his closet and pulled out the only decent shirt he owned. White, slightly wrinkled. He'd bought it 3 years ago for a job interview that never happened. He put it on. Found his one pair of dark pants. His only tie, a gift from his mother before she got sick. For the first time in 5 years, Marcus Thompson dressed like he belonged. The bus ride downtown felt different. People looked at him differently, not through him. At him. The shirt and tie transformed him into someone worth seeing. It was strange, uncomfortable, exhilarating. He arrived at Pinnacle Architecture at 7:23 a.m. The lobby was already buzzing with unusual activity. Security guards he didn't recognize. Executives rushing between offices. Something big was happening. Marcus approached the reception desk. Mrs. Patterson looked up and didn't recognize him at first. Then her eyes widened. Mr. Thompson, is that you? Good morning, Mrs. Patterson. I believe there's a visitor badge waiting for me, under the name Michael Turner. She stared at him for a long moment. Then without a word, she handed him the badge. Whatever's happening, she said quietly. Good luck. Thank you, ma'am. Shh. He clipped the badge to his shirt and walked toward the elevator. His reflection in the polished marble looked like a stranger, a professional, an architect, someone who belonged. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor, and chaos greeted him. Jasmine was waiting near the conference room, her face tight with tension. She grabbed his arm and pulled him aside. Tyler's gone, she whispered. He resigned last night, sent an email to the entire company saying he was leaving for personal reasons. His father. Must have. The recording we sent was enough to end his career before it started. She glanced around nervously. But that's not the problem. The Sheikh moved up his visit. He's arriving in an hour. Why? Someone leaked information about the anonymous solution. A reporter called the Sheikh's office asking questions about architectural fraud at Pinnacle. Now he wants answers before this becomes a public scandal. Marcus's stomach dropped. A reporter. We don't know who leaked it. Could have been Tyler trying to cause chaos on his way out. Could have been Brandon trying to control the narrative. Jasmine met his eyes. Or it could have been someone else entirely. What do? We tell the truth. All of it. She squeezed his arm. Are you ready? Marcus thought about 5 years of invisibility, 5 years of silence, 5 years of watching other people live the life that should have been his. Yes, he said. I'm ready. At 7:47 a.m., Whitmore's assistant appeared. Miss Carter, Mr. Whitmore will see you now, and your guest. Jasmine looked at Marcus. This is it. They walked together toward the corner office where Richard Whitmore waited. The man who had thrown the model at Marcus. The man who had made him kneel in his own blood. The man who was destroying his home. The man who was about to find out who really saved his $85 million project. Whitmore's office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany desk, leather chairs that cost more than Marcus made in a year, and behind the desk, Richard Whitmore himself, 58 years old, silver hair, cold eyes that missed nothing. Jasmine, he gestured to the chairs. Sit, and explain to me why you requested this meeting, and who this is. Jasmine sat. Marcus remained standing. Mr. Whitmore, this is Marcus Thompson. He's the person who created the Crescent Tower solution. Whitmore's expression didn't change. Marcus Thompson, I don't recognize the name. Is he from one of our partner firms? No, sir. Jasmine took a breath. He works here, in maintenance. The silence that followed was absolute. Whitmore's eyes moved to Marcus. Slowly, deliberately, taking in the white shirt, the tie, the visitor badge with a fake name. Maintenance, he repeated. Yes, sir. You're telling me that the solution to our foundation problem, the solution that my entire team of Harvard-educated architects couldn't develop, came from a janitor. Yes, sir. Whitmore leaned back in his chair. His face was unreadable. That's quite an accusation, Jasmine. I hope you have evidence to support it. I do. Jasmine opened her folder and spread documents across Whitmore's desk. Video documentation of Mr. Thompson's design process. Timestamps proving the solution existed before Brandon Hayes claimed to have developed it. Security footage showing Mr. Thompson salvaging the damaged prototype that he later modified. Whitmore studied the documents. His expression remained neutral, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. And you? He looked at Marcus. You have nothing to say for yourself. Marcus met his eyes. What would you like me to say, sir? I'd like you to explain how a maintenance worker with no degree and no credentials developed a structural solution that my senior engineers couldn't crack. I was 3 months from graduating with an architecture degree when my mother was diagnosed with cancer. I dropped out to take care of her. After she died, I couldn't afford to go back to school, so I took a job cleaning floors in the building where my dreams should have lived. Marcus kept his voice steady. But I never stopped learning, never stopped designing. The Crescent Tower flaw was obvious to me the moment I saw the blueprints. Obvious, Whitmore's voice was flat. A fundamental structural error that my team spent weeks analyzing was obvious to you. Yes, sir. The northern support structure can't handle the lateral stress from coastal winds. The integration points are vulnerable. A triangular reinforcement pattern with redistributed load-bearing elements solves the problem. Marcus paused. It's basic physics. Anyone with proper training should have seen it. Something flickered in Whitmore's eyes. Interest, maybe. Or anger. Marcus couldn't tell which. And the seismic analysis, the materials optimization, those are basic physics too. No, sir. Those required more advanced work. I spent several nights developing the comprehensive solution. Several nights? Whitmore stood up and walked to his window, his back to them. Several nights of work from a janitor, when my team, my highly paid, highly educated team, couldn't produce results in weeks. The silence stretched. Marcus felt his heart pounding. This was it. The moment where everything would be decided. Whitmore turned around. Do you know what I see when I look at you, Mr. Thompson? I imagine you see a janitor, sir. No. Whitmore walked closer. I see a problem. You've created evidence that could destroy Brandon Hayes' career. You've put my company in the middle of a potential fraud scandal. You've made me look like a fool who couldn't recognize talent in his own building. That wasn't my intention. I don't care about your intentions. I care about results. Whitmore's voice hardened. And right now, the result is that I have a sheik arriving in 45 minutes expecting answers. A reporter asking questions about fraud, and a maintenance worker claiming he saved my $85 million project. I'm not claiming anything, sir. I'm telling you what happened. Same thing. Whitmore turned to Jasmine. And you. You brought this to me. You're putting your career on the line for a man who cleans toilets. Why? Because he deserves recognition for his work. Jasmine's voice was firm. Because Brandon Hayes has been stealing credit from everyone in this company for years. Because talent doesn't care about titles or degrees or the color of someone's uniform. Talent doesn't pay the bills either. Whitmore sat back down. Here's what's going to happen. The shake arrives in 43 minutes. Brandon will present the solution as planned. Mr. Thompson will return to his maintenance duties. And this conversation never happened. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. After everything, after all the risk, nothing would change. With respect, sir, Jasmine said, that's not acceptable. It's not up for negotiation. Then I'll go to the reporter myself. I'll give them everything. The video documentation, the security footage, the evidence of systematic credit theft at Pinnacle Architecture. Jasmine stood up. I've been overlooked and dismissed in this company for 3 years. I'm done being silent. Whitmore's face went red. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you the truth, something that apparently doesn't happen often in this building. The door burst open. Brandon Hayes stood in the doorway, face flushed, breathing hard. Mr. Whitmore, I just heard that Jasmine requested a private meeting. Whatever she's telling you about the Crescent Tower solution... He stopped. His eyes landed on Marcus. For a moment, confusion flickered across his face. Then recognition. Then understanding. You? Brandon's voice was barely a whisper. The janitor. Good morning, Brandon. Marcus's voice was calm. I believe you've been presenting my work as your own. Brandon's face contorted. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. He turned to Whitmore. Sir, you can't seriously believe that a maintenance worker... I believe evidence, Brandon, and right now the evidence suggests that you claimed credit for work you didn't do. Evidence? What evidence? Brandon snatched the documents from Whitmore's desk. His eyes scanned the video stills, the timestamps, the security footage. His face went pale. This is fabricated. It has to be fabricated. Explain the seismic calculations, Brandon. Brandon looked up. What? The seismic calculations in the solution you presented. Explain them to me. Right now. Silence. Brandon's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. The seismic analysis is... It's complicated. The integration points create stress vectors that... You don't know. Whitmore's voice was ice. You can't explain your own solution because it was never your solution. Sir, please. I've been working on this project for weeks. I was close to a breakthrough. Someone must have stolen my preliminary work and... Stop. Whitmore held up his hand. Just stop. I've heard enough excuses to last a lifetime. He turned to Marcus. You. Can you explain the seismic calculations? Marcus stepped forward. Without hesitation, without notes, he began. The triangular reinforcement pattern addresses the primary foundation vulnerability, but the integration points remain susceptible to lateral movement during seismic events. The solution requires secondary dampening structures at key junction points, specifically where the modified northern support meets the original eastern framework. He pulled a pen from his pocket and began sketching on one of the documents, his hand moving with practiced precision. The load distribution follows a logarithmic curve that accounts for soil composition variability along the coastal foundation. By adding 3 strategic support struts at angles of 47, 63, and 81 degrees, we create a self-correcting stress redistribution system that can absorb up to Category 4 seismic forces without structural compromise. He continued for another 3 minutes. Equations, calculations, stress analysis, material specifications. When he finished, the room was silent. Whitmore stared at the annotated document. Brandon stared at Marcus. Jasmine stared at the floor, trying to hide her smile. Where did you learn this? Whitmore's voice was different now, quieter, almost respectful. Howard University, and 5 years of independent study. 5 years of mopping floors while studying structural engineering in your spare time. Yes, sir. Whitmore shook his head slowly. In 40 years of business, I've never seen anything like this. He looked at Brandon. Get out. Sir. Get out of my office, get out of my building. Pack your desk and be gone within the hour. Whitmore's voice rose. You're finished at Pinnacle, and if I find out you try to work in architecture anywhere in this city, I will personally destroy what's left of your career. Brandon's face crumbled. You can't do this. Your father can golf with someone else. Now get out. Brandon stumbled toward the door. At the threshold, he turned and looked at Marcus with pure hatred in his eyes. This isn't over, he said. You think you've won? You're still nobody. You'll always be nobody. Then he was gone. Whitmore sat down heavily. He looked older suddenly, tired. Jasmine, give us the room. Sir. Now. Jasmine hesitated, then walked to the door. She caught Marcus's eye as she passed, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. The door closed. Marcus was alone with Richard Whitmore, the man who had humiliated him, the man who was destroying his home, the man who held his future in his hands. Sit down, Mr. Thompson. Marcus sat. I'm going to tell you something that I've never told anyone in this company. Whitmore leaned forward. 42 years ago, I was you. Not a janitor, but close. Mailroom clerk at a firm that doesn't exist anymore. I had ideas. Big ideas. Nobody listened. Marcus said nothing. I clawed my way up, stepped on people, made compromises I'm not proud of. Built this company from nothing into something worth $85 million. Whitmore's voice hardened. And I will not let it fall apart because a reporter wants to write a story about fraud. What are you saying? I'm saying that I need the Sheikh to believe in this solution. I need him to believe in the people presenting it. And right now, those people include a maintenance worker with no degree and no credentials. I understand the solution better than anyone in this building. That's not the point. Perception matters. The Sheikh needs to see professionals, experts, people who look like architects. Whitmore paused. People who don't look like they just finished mopping a floor. Marcus felt the familiar anger rising. The anger he'd suppressed for 5 years. The anger at a world that judged him by his uniform instead of his mind. What are you proposing? I'm proposing a partnership. You work with my team to finalize the presentation. Jasmine presents the solution to the Sheikh. Your name goes on the documentation as a consultant. After the project is secured, we discuss a more permanent arrangement. A consultant. Marcus let the word hang in the air. I save your $85 million project and you make me a consultant. It's more than you have now. It's less than I deserve. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. You're in no position to negotiate, Mr. Thompson. You have no degree, no credentials, no legal standing. You're a maintenance worker who happens to have a talent for structural engineering. And you're a CEO who happens to need that talent more than you've ever needed anything in your life. The words came out before Marcus could stop them. 5 years of silence broken in an instant. Whitmore stared at him. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then, unexpectedly, Whitmore smiled. You have backbone. I respect that. He stood up. Fine. What do you want? I want my name on the project, not as a consultant, as a co-designer. That would require explaining who you are. Then explain it. Tell the Sheikh the truth. Let him decide whether my background matters more than my work. You're asking me to gamble $85 million on the idea that a Middle Eastern billionaire will accept a janitor as an architect. I'm asking you to gamble on talent, the same talent that saved your project. Marcus stood up, meeting Whitmore's eyes. You said you were like me 42 years ago, someone with ideas that nobody would hear. What would you have wanted? What would you have needed? Whitmore was silent. Outside the window, the city hummed with morning traffic. Somewhere in that city, Marcus's apartment building was being prepared for demolition. Somewhere, Mrs. Williams and the other holdouts were packing their last belongings. And somewhere, a young man who had given up everything to care for his dying mother was finally asking for what he deserved. The Sheikh arrives in 23 minutes, Whitmore finally said. Can you present the solution yourself, explain the calculations, answer questions? Yes. Can you do it without falling apart? Without letting emotion compromise your professionalism? I've been hiding emotion for 5 years. I can manage 20 minutes. Whitmore nodded slowly. Then let's see what you're made of, Mr. Thompson. If you can convince the Sheikh, you'll have everything you asked for. If you can't, he shrugged. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. He walked to the door and opened it. Jasmine? His voice boomed through the hallway. Get my team together. We have 20 minutes to prepare for the most important presentation of our lives. And we have a new presenter. The next 19 minutes were controlled chaos. Jasmine briefed Marcus on the Sheikh's personality, direct, impatient, demanding. He valued competence over credentials. He valued honesty over flattery. He'll test you, she warned. He'll ask questions designed to trip you up. Stay calm. Stay confident. Let the work speak for itself. Marcus nodded. His hands were steady. His mind was clear. For 5 years, he had been preparing for this moment. He just hadn't known it. At 8:57 a.m., the elevator doors opened and Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour walked into Pinnacle Architecture. His entourage followed. 4 engineers, 2 financial advisors, a personal assistant carrying a leather briefcase. Whitmore greeted him in the lobby. Sheikh Al Mansour, welcome back to Pinnacle. We're prepared to address all your concerns. I should hope so. The Sheikh's voice was cold. I've received disturbing reports about the origins of your foundation solution. Reports of fraud, credit theft, deception. Those reports are why I've arranged this meeting. To tell you the truth, all of it. The Sheikh's eyebrows rose. The truth? How refreshing. They walked to the boardroom. The entire senior team was assembled. Engineers, analysts, executives, everyone except Brandon Hayes. And at the head of the table, standing beside the architectural model, was Marcus Thompson. The Sheikh stopped when he saw him. His eyes narrowed. Who is this This, Whitmore said, is Marcus Thompson, the man who actually created your foundation solution. Silence. The Sheikh studied Marcus with unsettling intensity. His gaze took in the white shirt, the borrowed tie, the hands that were clearly more accustomed to mops than presentations. You're the maintenance worker, he said finally, the one who was bleeding on the floor when I arrived 3 days ago. Yes, sir? And now you're claiming to have designed the solution that will save my $85 million project. I'm not claiming anything, sir. I'm prepared to demonstrate. The Sheikh glanced at Whitmore, then back at Marcus. Very well, demonstrate. Marcus took a breath. This was it. Everything he had worked for. Everything he had dreamed. Everything he had lost and fought to regain. It all came down to the next few minutes. He stepped up to the architectural model and began. The original foundation design failed to account for the lateral stress patterns created by coastal wind systems. The northern support structure was particularly vulnerable with integration points that would experience metal fatigue within 3 to 5 years of construction. His hands moved over the model, pointing to specific locations. My solution addresses this through a triangular reinforcement pattern that redistributes load-bearing forces across 3 strategic support struts. The angles specifically 47, 63, and 81 degrees create a self-correcting stress absorption system. He continued moving through the seismic analysis, the materials optimization, the cost projections. His voice was steady, his explanations were clear, his confidence was unshakable. The Sheikh's chief engineer interrupted with a question about soil composition variability. Marcus answered without hesitation. A financial advisor asked about cost overruns. Marcus provided specific percentages. The Sheikh himself asked about construction timeline impacts. Marcus walked him through the modified schedule. Question after question, answer after answer. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. Skepticism gave way to interest. Interest gave way to respect. When Marcus finished, 15 minutes had passed. The room was silent. The Sheikh stood up and walked to the model. He examined it closely, running his fingers over the modified support structures. These calculations, he said. Where did you learn them? Howard University, sir, before I had to withdraw. Why did you withdraw? My mother was dying. Someone had to take care of her. The Sheikh nodded slowly. In my country, we honor those who sacrifice for family. It is considered the highest virtue. He turned to face Marcus directly. You gave up your future to care for your mother, and then you continued to develop your skills while working as a maintenance worker. For how long? 5 years, sir? 5 years. The Sheikh shook his head. 5 years of cleaning floors while your talents went unrecognized. 5 years of watching lesser men receive credit for work they couldn't have done. He looked at Whitmore. And your company allowed this to happen. Whitmore shifted uncomfortably. We didn't know that you didn't look. The Sheikh's voice hardened. You had a genius working in your building and you never thought to ask if the janitor might have ideas. Because janitors don't have ideas. Janitors don't have dreams. Janitors are invisible. He turned back to Marcus. But you are not invisible to me, Mr. Thompson. I see you. I see what you've accomplished against impossible odds. And I see what you could become if given the opportunity. Marcus's throat tightened. 5 years of invisibility. 5 years of being nothing to everyone. And now this. Here's my decision, the Sheikh announced. The foundation solution is approved. My funding will continue, but I have conditions. Whitmore leaned forward. Name them. Mr. Thompson will be listed as the primary architect on all project documentation. He will be given an official position at this company with appropriate compensation, and he will complete his degree with Pinnacle covering all educational expenses. Marcus's heart stopped. Sheikh Al-Mansour, Whitmore began, those are significant commitments. They are the minimum requirements for my continued involvement. The Sheikh's voice left no room for negotiation. You have benefited from Mr. Thompson's genius while paying him minimum wage to clean your toilets. It ends now. He extended his hand to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, I look forward to seeing what you build when you're no longer invisible. Marcus shook the offered hand. His grip was firm. His eyes were clear. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Show me. Build something that will outlast us both. The Sheikh smiled. And perhaps when the Crescent Tower is complete, you can design something for me personally. I have been looking for an architect who understands that true talent has nothing to do with degrees or pedigrees. He turned and walked toward the door, his entourage following. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. Mr. Whitmore, one more thing. Yes, Sheikh Al-Mansour. I know about your development company, the buildings in Harlem, the families you're displacing. His eyes were cold. That stops, today, or our partnership ends permanently. He walked out, leaving silence in his wake. Whitmore stood frozen. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. Slowly he turned to Marcus. It seems, he said quietly, that you've won. I didn't come here to win, sir. I came here to be seen. Well, Whitmore's voice was bitter. You've certainly accomplished that. He walked out of the boardroom without another word. Jasmine rushed to Marcus's side. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. He looked at her. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Don't sell yourself short. That presentation was all you. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. 5 years. You waited 5 years, and now? Now, Marcus said slowly, everything changes. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Williams. Turn on the news. Channel 7. Your face is everywhere. Marcus walked to the conference room's wall-mounted television and turned it on. His own image stared back at him. A photo from his Howard University days somehow obtained by the media. Beside it, the Pinnacle Architecture logo. Breaking news this morning in the architecture world, the anchor was saying. Reports are emerging of a remarkable story at Pinnacle Architecture where a maintenance worker has been credited with saving an $85 million project. Marcus Thompson, a former Howard University student who dropped out to care for his dying mother, allegedly developed the structural solution that the firm's senior architects couldn't crack. We're waiting for official confirmation from Pinnacle, but sources inside the company say Mr. Thompson will be offered a full-time position and support to complete his degree. The story continued, but Marcus stopped listening. His face, on television, his name spoken by strangers. He was no longer invisible. The realization hit him like a physical force. His knees buckled slightly. Jasmine grabbed his arm to steady him. Breathe, she said. Just breathe. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I've been invisible for so long. I don't know how to be seen. You'll learn. She squeezed his arm. We'll figure it out together. Marcus looked out the window at the city spread below him. Somewhere out there, his apartment building was waiting. His neighbors were waiting. Mrs. Williams was waiting. And somewhere in a cemetery on the other side of the city, his mother was waiting too. I need to make a call, he said. He walked to a quiet corner and dialed a number he'd never expected to use. A woman answered. Howard University Office of Academic Affairs. How may I direct your call? My name is Marcus Thompson. I was a student there 6 years ago. I had to withdraw before completing my degree. He took a breath. I'd like to discuss coming back. Of course, Mr. Thompson. Let me transfer you to our returning student's office, and may I just say, we've been watching the news this morning. On behalf of the entire university, congratulations. We always knew you were special. Marcus closed his eyes. Special. No one had called him that in 5 years. Thank you, he managed. Thank you very much. The transfer clicked through and a new voice came on the line. Mr. Thompson, we've been trying to reach you for months. Your former professors have been advocating for your return. We have several scholarship options available, and given recent developments, I imagine we'll have even more to discuss. The conversation continued, but Marcus felt like he was floating outside his body, watching himself from a distance, watching a man who used to be invisible finally step into the light. When he hung up, Jasmine was waiting. Good news. They want me back. Full scholarship. Flexible schedule to accommodate work. He shook his head in disbelief. A week ago, I couldn't afford my blood pressure medication. Now Howard University is offering me a full ride. That's what happens when the world finally sees who you really are. She smiled. Come on, we have a lot of work to do. The Crescent Tower isn't going to design itself. They walked out of the conference room together. In the hallway, people stopped to stare. Executives who had never noticed Marcus before now nodded at him with respect, or at least recognition. A young intern approached hesitantly. Excuse me, are you Marcus Thompson, the one from the news? Yes. Could I maybe ask you some questions sometime about how you did it? I'm studying architecture and I just... She trailed off nervously. Of course. Marcus smiled. Find me any time. The girl's face lit up. Thank you so much. She hurried away and Marcus continued walking. But something had shifted inside him. Something permanent. For 5 years he had been invisible, ignored, forgotten. Now he was being stopped in hallways, asked for advice, treated like someone who mattered. It was overwhelming, terrifying, wonderful, and it was only the beginning. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Mrs. Williams. Whitmore Development just announced they're halting the Harlem demolition project, some kind of partnership with local housing authorities. You know anything about that? Marcus smiled. Maybe a little, he typed back. He put his phone away and looked out the window one more time. The city was still there. The same buildings, the same streets, the same people rushing to jobs that defined them in ways they didn't choose. But Marcus Thompson was no longer one of them. He was finally irrevocably visible, and nothing would ever be the same. The morning after the Sheikh's visit, Marcus walked into Pinnacle Architecture through the main entrance for the first time in 5 years. No maintenance uniform, no cleaning cart, no lowered eyes. He wore the same white shirt from yesterday, now freshly pressed. His grandfather's compass sat heavy in his pocket. His visitor badge had been replaced with a real one. Blue letters on white plastic. Marcus Thompson, architectural consultant. The security guard at the front desk did a double take. Mr. Thompson, good morning, sir. Sir? No one had ever called him sir in this building. Good morning, Jerome. The guard blinked. You know my name? I've cleaned beside you for 5 years. I know everyone's name. Jerome's face shifted through several emotions. Surprise, shame, something that might have been respect. I never knew, sir. I never knew you were... Nobody did. That was the point. Marcus walked toward the elevator, leaving Jerome staring after him. The executive floor was different now. People looked at him, some with curiosity, some with resentment, a few with something like fear. He understood that last one. If a janitor could become an architect overnight, what did that say about the people who'd spent years climbing the traditional ladder? Jasmine met him outside Whitmore's office at 8:17 a.m. You ready for this? What exactly am I ready for? Negotiation. Whitmore spent all night with his lawyers trying to figure out how to minimize what he owes you. She handed him a folder. Here's what they're offering. Base salary of $60,000, junior architect title, 2 years probationary period before any profit sharing. Marcus scanned the document. His jaw tightened. They're offering me junior status for saving their $85 million project. They're hoping you don't know your worth. They're hoping you're still thinking like a janitor. Then they're going to be disappointed. Whitmore's assistant appeared at the door. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Whitmore will see you now. Marcus straightened his tie and walked in. Whitmore sat behind his massive desk, flanked by 2 lawyers in matching gray suits. His face was carefully neutral, but Marcus could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands. Richard Whitmore was afraid. Good. Mr. Thompson, please sit. Whitmore gestured to a chair that was noticeably lower than his own. A power play. Marcus had cleaned enough executive offices to recognize the tactic. He remained standing. I prefer to stand, thank you. The lawyers exchanged glances. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Very well, I assume you've reviewed our initial offer. I have. It's insulting. Insulting. One of the lawyers leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, we're offering you a professional position despite your lack of formal credentials. Most firms didn't have their $85 million project saved by a janitor. Marcus's voice was calm but firm. Let me be clear about my understanding of the situation. I developed a comprehensive structural solution that your entire team of credentialed architects couldn't produce. I did it in my spare time after cleaning your toilets for 8 hours a day. The sheikh specifically requested my involvement as a condition of his continued funding. He paused to let the words sink in. You're not offering me this position out of generosity. You're offering it because you have no choice. The question isn't whether you'll give me what I deserve. The question is how much you're willing to lose by pretending otherwise. Whitmore's face reddened. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts. The media already has the story. The sheikh has made his expectations clear. If I walk out of this building and tell reporters that Pinnacle tried to lowball the man who saved their project, how do you think that plays? Silence. The lawyers whispered urgently to each other. Whitmore stared at Marcus with an expression caught between fury and grudging respect. What do you want? Marcus had thought about this all night. He'd made lists, run calculations, considered every angle. Now he laid it out. Senior architect title, not junior. Base salary of $120,000, which is still below market rate for someone with my demonstrated abilities. Full benefits including health insurance starting immediately, tuition coverage for completing my degree at Howard as the sheikh already specified, and 5% profit sharing on the Crescent Tower project. 5%, the lawyer nearly choked. That would be over $4 million. I saved you $85 million. $4 million is a bargain. Whitmore stood up abruptly. This is extortion. This is negotiation. You've just never had to negotiate with someone who doesn't need you more than you need them. You do need us. You have no degree, no credentials. Without this company, you're still just a what? Marcus stepped closer. Say it, Mr. Whitmore. Say what you really think I am. The room went silent. Whitmore's mouth worked. His face was nearly purple. But the words wouldn't come. Couldn't come. Not with lawyers present. Not with so much at stake. That's what I thought. Marcus turned toward the door. I'll give you 24 hours to consider my terms. After that, I start talking to other firms. I'm sure some of your competitors would love to hire the man behind the Crescent Tower solution. Wait. The word came out strangled. Defeated. Marcus turned back. Whitmore sat down heavily. He suddenly looked all of his 58 years. Sit down, Mr. Thompson, please. This time, Marcus sat. You've made your point, Whitmore said quietly. You have leverage and you know how to use it. I underestimated you. I've been underestimating you for 5 years. He took a breath. I'll agree to your terms. Senior architect. $120,000. Full benefits. Tuition coverage. 5% on Crescent Tower. Marcus waited. There was something else coming. But I want something in return. What? Your silence. About how you were treated here. About the things you saw while you were invisible. Whitmore's eyes met his. You know things about this company that could cause significant damage if they became public. Marcus thought about all the conversations he'd overheard, the shortcuts, the compromises, the casual cruelty toward anyone without power. You want me to protect you. I want us to protect each other, a fresh start. Whatever happened before today stays before today. And the people you've hurt, the buildings you've demolished in Harlem, the families you've displaced. Whitmore's face twitched. The sheikh has already demanded changes to those operations. I'm meeting with housing authorities this afternoon to discuss transition plans. That's not enough. What more do you want? Marcus leaned forward. Guaranteed relocation assistance for every family displaced by Whitmore development projects. Fair market value buyouts, not the lowball offers you've been making. And a community fund for affordable housing in the areas you've gentrified. That would cost millions. Consider it the price of my silence. The lawyers were whispering furiously again. Whitmore raised a hand to quiet them. You're asking me to fundamentally change how I do business. I'm asking you to do business like someone who cares about human beings. Is that really so unreasonable? Another long silence. Finally, Whitmore nodded. Draw up the terms, all of them. We'll sign by end of day. He extended his hand across the desk. Marcus looked at that hand, the same hand that had thrown a model at him, the same hand that had pointed at him and ordered him to kneel. He shook it anyway, because this wasn't about forgiveness. This was about power. And for the first time in 5 years, Marcus Thompson had it. The news broke at 11:42 a.m. Every major network carried the story. Cable news, online outlets, social media exploded with the hashtag #BringMeTheRealArchitect. Marcus watched from Jasmine's office as his face appeared on screen after screen. His Howard University photo, his maintenance uniform ID, and now his new Pinnacle architecture headshot taken that morning by a photographer who kept asking him to smile. He didn't know how to smile anymore. Not like that. Not on command. "This is insane," Jasmine said, scrolling through her phone. "You're trending on Twitter. There are memes. Someone already started a GoFundMe for your education even though you don't need it." "Shut it down. Tell them to donate to housing advocacy instead." "You don't want to capitalize on this. Most people would be scheduling talk show appearances by now." Marcus shook his head. "I don't want to be famous. I just want to work." His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Williams. "News van's outside the building. They want to interview the neighbors. What should we tell them?" He typed back quickly. "Tell the truth. All of it. The utility shutoffs. The intimidation. Everything." If Whitmore thought his silence could be bought that easily, he was about to learn otherwise. Marcus had agreed not to share what he'd heard inside Pinnacle. He'd said nothing about what happened outside. At 12:15 p.m. his phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Thompson, this is Victoria Chen from the New York Times. I'm working on a story about your experience at Pinnacle Architecture. Would you have time for an interview?" No comment. "Mr. Thompson, your story is remarkable. The public deserves to know. The public will know what they need to know. Right now I have buildings to design." He hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. Another reporter. He turned it off. Jasmine watched him with something like awe. "You just hung up on the New York Times." "I have work to do. They can wait." "Most people would kill for that kind of attention." "I'm not most people." He pulled up the Crescent Tower blueprints on her computer. "Now show me what modifications the team has been considering. I want to review everything before the next presentation." They worked through lunch, through the afternoon, through the chaos of reporters outside and executives inside who didn't know how to act around someone whose status had changed so dramatically. At 3:47 p.m., Jasmine's office door opened without a knock. Brandon Hayes stood in the doorway. He looked terrible. Unshaven, rumpled suit, eyes red from what might have been crying or drinking or both. "You," he said, pointing at Marcus. "You destroyed my life." Jasmine stood up quickly. "Brandon, you need to leave. Security already escorted you out once today." "I'm not talking to you." Brandon stepped closer to Marcus. "I'm talking to the janitor who thinks he can play architect." Marcus didn't stand, didn't flinch. "You destroyed your own life, Brandon. I just made sure you didn't profit from my work." "Your work?" Brandon laughed bitterly. "You're a dropout. A nobody. You clean toilets for a living, and you think you can just walk in here and take everything I've built. You didn't build anything. You stole it. From me. From Jasmine. From everyone who ever had an idea you could claim as your own." Brandon's face contorted. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Marcus finally stood, matching Brandon's height. "I've watched you for 5 years. I've seen you take credit for other people's work at least a dozen times. I've heard you lie to clients, backstab colleagues, and manipulate your way through every situation. The only thing you've ever built is a house of cards. And now it's falling down." Brandon's fist came out of nowhere. Marcus saw it just in time to turn his head, catching the blow on his cheek instead of his nose. Pain exploded across his face. He stumbled backward. "Security!" Jasmine screamed. Brandon lunged again, but Marcus was ready this time. 5 years of physical labor had made him strong. 5 years of survival had made him fast. He caught Brandon's wrist and twisted. The smaller man yelped and dropped to his knees. "You want to know the difference between us," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I earned everything I have. Every equation I know I learned in the dark. Every design I created I drew by candlelight. You were handed every opportunity in the world, and you wasted them all on shortcuts and lies." Security guards burst through the door. They grabbed Brandon and hauled him to his feet. "Get him out of here," Jasmine ordered, "and call the police. I want assault charges filed." "No," Marcus said. Everyone turned to look at him. "What? No charges." Marcus released Brandon's wrist. "Look at him. He's already destroyed. Prison won't fix what's broken inside him." Brandon stared at Marcus with an expression caught between hatred and confusion. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you show me mercy after everything I did? Because someone has to break the cycle." Marcus touched his cheek where the bruise was already forming. "You hurt me because you felt powerless. I'm choosing not to hurt you because I finally feel powerful. That's the difference. That's what you never understood." The security guards dragged Brandon away. His protests echoed down the hallway, growing fainter until they disappeared entirely. Jasmine handed Marcus an ice pack from her mini-fridge. "You're either the most forgiving person I've ever met, or the smartest." "Neither." He pressed the cold pack to his face. I just don't have time for revenge. There's too much work to do. The afternoon turned into evening. Marcus and Jasmine worked through the Crescent Tower, documentation, refining, adjusting, preparing for the official project launch next week. At 6:23 p.m., Whitmore's assistant appeared at the door. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Whitmore would like to see you in his office. There's been a development. Marcus exchanged glances with Jasmine. Her expression said, be careful. He followed the assistant down the hall. Whitmore wasn't alone in his office. A woman sat across from his desk, mid-50s, silver hair, impeccably dressed. She stood when Marcus entered, extending her hand. Mr. Thompson, I'm Eleanor Vasquez, Dean of the School of Architecture at Howard University. Marcus's heart stopped. Dean Vasquez? He shook her hand automatically. I wasn't expecting... Neither was I until this morning. She smiled warmly. When I saw the news, I immediately recognized your name. Professor Williams spoke of you often. He called you the most talented student he'd ever taught. Professor Williams, Marcus's thesis advisor, the man who had promised him a bright future. Professor Williams retired 3 years ago, Marcus said. I lost touch with him after your mother, yes, he told me. Dean Vasquez's expression softened. He also told me that he's been tracking your situation ever since. He was devastated when he couldn't reach you to help. Marcus's throat tightened. I changed my number. I couldn't face anyone from that life. That's understandable, but I'm here now, and I'm here with an offer. She sat back down, gesturing for Marcus to join her. Howard University wants you back, not just as a returning student, as a teaching assistant, fully funded. You'll complete your degree while helping mentor the next generation of architects. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. I don't understand. I don't have credentials. You have something more valuable than credentials, Mr. Thompson. You have proof. The Crescent Tower solution has been reviewed by our engineering department. They're calling it one of the most elegant structural designs they've seen in a decade. Dean Vasquez leaned forward. Howard University doesn't just want you to finish your degree. We want you to help us teach others how to think the way you think. Marcus looked at Whitmore, who had been uncharacteristically silent through the exchange. Did you arrange this? I made a phone call, Whitmore admitted. Consider it part of our agreement. You wanted tuition coverage. I decided to provide something better. Why? Whitmore was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was different than Marcus had ever heard it. Softer, almost human. Because 40 years ago, someone gave me a chance when I didn't deserve it. I've spent most of my life forgetting that. Maybe it's time I started remembering. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't friendship, but it was something, a crack in the armor that Whitmore had worn for so long. Marcus turned back to Dean Vasquez. When would I start? Next semester, January. That gives you 3 months to wrap up the immediate work here and prepare. She stood, offering her hand again. Welcome back to Howard, Mr. Thompson. We've been waiting for you. After she left, Marcus stood alone in Whitmore's office, trying to process what had just happened. In one day, he'd gone from invisible janitor to senior architect. He'd negotiated terms that would make him wealthy. He'd been offered a position at his alma mater. He'd watched his former tormentor crumble, and somehow he felt emptier than he had in years. What is it? Whitmore asked, watching him. I don't know. Marcus walked to the window. I spent 5 years dreaming about this, about being seen, about getting what I deserved, and now that it's happening, I don't know what to do with it. That's normal. Whitmore joined him at the window. Success is harder than failure. Failure just requires endurance. Success requires decisions. Responsibility. The weight of actually having what you wanted. Is that why you became the way you are? The weight was too much. Whitmore was silent for a long moment. I became the way I am because I convinced myself that the only way to succeed was to stop caring about others, to see people as obstacles or tools. He paused. You've shown me that was a lie. You cared about everyone even when no one cared about you, and you still succeeded. I'm not sure succeeded is the right word yet. It's a start. The rest comes with time. Whitmore turned to face him. Go home, Mr. Thompson. Rest. Process. Tomorrow we start the real work. Marcus nodded. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Richard, if we're going to be colleagues, you might as well call me Richard. It was strange, uncomfortable, but Marcus accepted it. Good night, Richard. Good night, Marcus. The bus ride home felt different tonight. Not because of the physical journey, but because of where he was going. The construction equipment was gone from around his building. The demolition signs had been removed. In their place, a new banner announced Community Partnership Program, Affordable Housing Initiative. Mrs. Williams was waiting for him in the lobby. "You did this," she said without preamble. "You saved our homes." "The Sheik did most of it, and Whitmore's lawyers. But you made them care." She reached out and touched his cheek where Brandon had hit him. "What happened here? Nothing that matters. Everything matters." Her eyes were fierce. "You matter. What you did matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She pulled him into a hug. Tight, warm, maternal. Marcus felt something break open inside him, a dam he hadn't known was holding. He cried. Not dramatically, not loudly, just tears streaming down his face while an elderly woman held him in the lobby of a building that had almost been destroyed. "Let it out," Mrs. Williams said. "You've been strong long enough. Let it out." He cried for his mother, for the years he'd lost, for the dreams that had been stolen, and the dignity that had been stripped away piece by piece. He cried for the janitor who had learned to be invisible just to survive, and he cried for the architect who was finally being allowed to exist. When the tears stopped, Ms. Williams released him and handed him a tissue. "Better? I don't know." He wiped his face. "Different. Different is good, same as what was killing you." She patted his arm. "Now go upstairs, sleep. Tomorrow you start your new life." His apartment looked the same as it had this morning. The same walls, the same sketches, the same bills, though those would be paid off soon. But everything was different. Marcus sat at his desk and picked up his grandfather's compass. The brass was warm from his pocket. The needle pointed true north just as it always had. "I wish you could see this," he said to the empty room. To his mother. To his grandfather. To everyone who had ever believed in him and died before they could see him succeed. His phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. "You okay?" That was a lot for one day. He typed back, "I think so. Ask me again tomorrow." "Fair. Get some sleep. We have a building to finish designing." He smiled. Actually smiled. It felt foreign on his face after so long. Another text came through. This one from an unknown number. "Mr. Thompson, this is Professor Williams. Eleanor told me she found you. I've been praying for this day for 5 years. Can we talk soon? There's so much I want to tell you." Professor Williams, the man who had called him the most talented student he'd ever taught. Marcus typed back, "Tomorrow, I'll call you tomorrow, and thank you for not giving up on me." The response came immediately. "I never did. I never could. Some lights are too bright to let go out." Marcus set down his phone and looked around his apartment one more time. The same walls, the same sketches, the same space where he had spent 5 years hiding from the world. But tomorrow he would leave this place. Not as a refugee fleeing failure, but as a man moving towards something better. He had won. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. Enough to start over. Enough to build something new. Enough to finally be seen. Marcus Thompson lay down on his narrow bed and closed his eyes. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't dream of falling. He dreamed of rising, and when morning came, he would rise. The alarm woke him at 5:30 a.m. Early. Earlier than he needed to be up. But Marcus had learned something in 5 years of being invisible. Time was the only resource that couldn't be bought back. Every minute mattered. He showered in water that was hot for the first time in weeks. The building's utilities had been restored as part of the community partnership agreement. He dressed in the new clothes that had arrived last night. A delivery from Pinnacle arranged by Jasmine. 3 suits, 5 shirts, ties, a proper briefcase, the uniform of visibility. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. The same face he'd seen for 32 years, but different somehow. The eyes were the same, but the weight behind them had shifted. This was who he was now. This was who he would become. His phone buzzed at 6:15 a.m. A calendar reminder. 9:00 a.m. Crescent Tower. Design review. First official meeting as senior architect. Senior architect. The words still felt like fiction, but they were real as the compass in his pocket, as real as the scars on his hands. Marcus Thompson walked out of his apartment building at 6:47 a.m. The morning sun was just beginning to light the Harlem streets. He had a bus to catch, a building to design, a life to build, and nothing, not poverty, not prejudice, not 5 years of invisible suffering would ever make him kneel again. 3 months passed faster than Marcus thought possible. The morning of January 15th arrived with freezing temperatures and a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from colleagues, from reporters, from people he'd never met who wanted to congratulate him, interview him, or simply shake his hand. Today was the Crescent Tower groundbreaking ceremony, and today was Marcus Thompson's first day back at Howard University. He stood in his new apartment in Brooklyn, adjusting his tie in the mirror. The face looking back at him was familiar but transformed. The hollows in his cheeks had filled out. The permanent tension in his shoulders had eased. He looked like someone who belonged in the world he was entering. His phone buzzed again. Jasmine. Car's downstairs. Shake's team landed an hour ago. Everyone's waiting. Marcus grabbed his briefcase and his grandfather's compass. He'd had the compass professionally cleaned last month. The brass gleamed like new, but the worn edges remained. He wouldn't change those for anything. The car ride to the ceremony site took 40 minutes. Marcus spent it reviewing his speech, though he'd memorized it weeks ago. Old habits. The need to be overprepared never quite went away. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Nervous. Terrified. You don't look it. 5 years of practice. They pulled up to the construction site at 9:47 a.m. A crowd had already gathered. Media trucks lined the street. Photographers jockeyed for position behind barriers, and at the center of it all, a raised platform where dignitaries waited. Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour, Richard Whitmore, the mayor of New York, various officials and executives whose names Marcus had learned but couldn't quite remember. Jasmine met him at the car door. You ready for this one? No. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. She straightened his lapel. Remember, you're not just here for yourself. You're here for everyone who's ever been invisible, everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. No pressure. All the pressure. That's what makes it meaningful. They walked toward the platform together. The crowd parted. Cameras flashed. Voices called his name. Mr. Thompson! Mr. Thompson! Can you tell us how it feels? He ignored them, kept walking, one foot in front of the other, the same way he'd survived 5 years of invisibility. The sheikh saw him first. His face broke into a genuine smile. Mr. Thompson, our guest of honor, arrives. He stepped forward to shake Marcus's hand. I was beginning to worry you'd gotten cold feet. Just traffic, sir. Traffic, the great equalizer. Even architects must bow to New York congestion. The sheikh guided him toward the platform. Are you prepared for your speech? As prepared as I'll ever be. Good. Because after today, everything changes. You understand that yes, this ceremony isn't just about a building. It's about a statement, about what's possible when talent is recognized regardless of circumstance. Marcus nodded. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not sure you fully grasp what you've started. The sheikh's eyes were intense. Your story is spreading, not just in America, worldwide. I've had calls from developers in Dubai, London, Tokyo. They all want to know about the janitor who became an architect. They want to know if there are others like you hiding in their own buildings. There probably are. Exactly, and that terrifies them. The sheikh smiled. Good. Fear is the beginning of change. The ceremony began at 10:15 a.m. The mayor spoke first. Platitudes about economic development and job creation. Then Whitmore, his voice carefully neutral, discussing the technical achievements of the Crescent Tower design without quite acknowledging who had made them possible. Then the sheikh. I came to America 3 months ago expecting to cancel this project, he said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. I had lost faith in pinnacle architecture, lost faith in their ability to solve a problem that threatened lives. He paused, letting the words sink in. Then I met Marcus Thompson, a man who had been working in this building for 5 years. Not as an architect, as a janitor, cleaning floors, emptying trash, invisible to everyone around him. The crowd shifted, murmured, cameras clicked. And yet this invisible man had solved a problem that highly paid, highly educated architects could not. He had developed a comprehensive structural solution not in a state-of-the-art design studio, but in a dark apartment by candlelight, not with expensive software, but with pencil and paper and a brass compass inherited from his grandfather. The sheikh turned to Marcus. I have built many things in my life. Towers, hotels, monuments to human ambition. But I have never seen anything as remarkable as what Mr. Thompson achieved against impossible odds. He is proof that talent exists everywhere, even in the places we least expect to find it, even in the places we've been trained not to look. He gestured to the podium. Marcus, the floor is yours. Marcus walked to the microphone on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The crowd was silent, waiting. 1,000 eyes fixed on the man who had cleaned their toilets. He thought about running, about walking off the stage and disappearing back into invisibility. Then he thought about his mother, about Mrs. Williams, about everyone who had ever believed in him. He opened his mouth and spoke. 3 months ago, I was kneeling on a marble floor, bleeding, picking up pieces of a broken model, while executives stepped around me like I was furniture. I had been invisible for 5 years. I had convinced myself that invisibility was safety, that if I just kept my head down and did my job, I would survive. His voice grew stronger. But survival isn't living, and invisibility isn't safety. It's slow death. Every day you spend hiding who you are, you lose a piece of yourself that you can never get back. He looked out at the crowd. I'm not here to tell you my story is unique. It's not. There are millions of people just like me, people with talent, with dreams, with the ability to change the world, but they're invisible. They're cleaning your offices, they're serving your food, they're driving your cars, and you don't see them. You don't ask them what they think. You don't imagine that they might have ideas worth hearing. Marcus gripped the podium. That has to change. Not because it's fair, not because it's right, but because we're wasting human potential on a scale that's almost criminal. Every invisible person is a solution that never gets heard, a building that never gets built, a problem that never gets solved. Shh! He pointed toward the construction site. This tower will stand for 100 years, maybe longer, but it almost wasn't built at all because the people in charge couldn't see past their own assumptions, couldn't imagine that a janitor might know something an executive didn't. He paused. I'm not special. I'm not a genius. I'm just someone who refused to stop learning even when the world told me I had no right to know the things I wanted to know. Anyone can do what I did. All they need is a chance. He looked directly into the cameras. So here's my challenge to everyone watching. Look around your offices, your buildings, your lives. Look at the people you've been trained not to see. Ask them what they think. Listen to their answers. You might be surprised by what you find. He stepped back from the podium. Thank you. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then the applause began. Not polite applause, not obligatory applause, real applause. The kind that came from people who had actually heard something. Marcus walked off the platform in a daze. Jasmine grabbed his arm and squeezed. That was incredible. I don't remember half of what I said. I do, and so will everyone else. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. The ceremonial groundbreaking. Photographs with dignitaries. Handshakes with people whose names he immediately forgot. At 12:30 p.m., Marcus excused himself. I have to go. My first class starts at 2. The sheik nodded. Go. Build the future. That's more important than standing here. Marcus caught a car to Howard University. The campus was exactly as he remembered it. The same buildings, the same walkways, the same energy of young people believing they could change the world. He'd been one of them once, before everything fell apart. Now he was back. Not as a student exactly, as something in between. Professor Williams met him at the entrance to the architecture building, 20 years older than the last time Marcus had seen him. Gray hair, weathered face, but the same sharp eyes. Marcus. The professor's voice cracked. My God, Marcus. They embraced. Right there in front of the building. 2 men who had lost each other and found each other again. I'm sorry, Marcus said. I should have called. I should have reached out. I just couldn't. Stop. Professor Williams pulled back, hands on Marcus's shoulders. You have nothing to apologize for. You did what you had to do. You survived. That's all that matters. I almost didn't. But you did, and now you're here. The professor smiled. Come. There's someone who wants to meet you. They walked through hallways that Marcus remembered but didn't quite recognize. New renovations, new technology. The world had moved on while he'd been mopping floors. Professor Williams stopped outside a lecture hall. Through the window, Marcus could see students gathered inside. Young faces, eager faces. The faces of people who still believed that anything was possible. They've been waiting for you all morning, the professor said. I told them about you years ago, about the most talented student I ever taught, about the one who got away. I didn't get away. I got pulled away. Same difference. You're back now. That's what matters. He opened the door. The room went silent as Marcus entered. 100 pairs of eyes turned to face him. Recognition flickered across some faces. Others just stared at the stranger in the expensive suit. Professor Williams walked to the front of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to someone special. This is Marcus Thompson. 6 years ago, he was sitting where you're sitting. He was 3 months from graduation when life intervened. He had to choose between his education and his family. He chose family. The professor paused. For 5 years, Marcus worked as a maintenance worker at one of the most prestigious architecture firms in New York. He cleaned their floors. He emptied their trash. And in his spare time, by candlelight, in a tiny apartment with no electricity, he continued to study, continued to learn, continued to design. Some students shifted in their seats. They'd heard the story on the news, but hearing it here in this room was different. 3 months ago, Marcus solved a structural problem that an entire team of highly paid architects couldn't crack. He saved an $85 million project. He's now a senior architect at Pinnacle Architecture and a teaching assistant here at Howard. The professor turned to Marcus. Your floor. Marcus walked to the front of the room. His hands were shaking, his heart was pounding, but his voice was steady when he spoke. I'm not here to lecture you about architecture. You have Professor Williams for that, and he's better at it than I'll ever be. Nervous laughter. I'm here to tell you something that no one told me when I was in your position, something I had to learn the hard way. He leaned against the desk. Your degree is not your identity. Your job title is not your worth. Your circumstances do not define what you're capable of achieving. He looked around the room. When I dropped out of school, I thought my life was over. I thought everything I'd worked for was gone forever. And in some ways it was. I lost opportunities, lost connections, lost years that I'll never get back. His voice hardened. But I never lost my mind. I never lost my ability to think, to learn to create. Those things can't be taken from you, not by poverty, not by circumstance, not by a world that tells you to stay in your lane and know your place. He straightened up. Some of you are going to graduate and go straight into prestigious firms. Good for you. Others are going to struggle, going to face setbacks, going to wonder if you made a mistake pursuing this career. He met their eyes one by one. To those of you who struggle, don't give up. Don't stop learning. Don't let anyone tell you that your circumstances determine your potential. I designed buildings while I was cleaning toilets. I solved engineering problems while I was mopping floors. If I can do that, you can do anything. A hand went up in the back, a young woman with natural hair and serious eyes. Mr. Thompson, how did you keep going when everything was against you? How did you not just give up? Marcus thought about the question, thought about the 5 years of darkness and silence. I don't know if I can give you a satisfying answer. Some days I did want to give up. Some days I came very close. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his grandfather's compass. But I had this. My grandfather gave it to me when I was 18. He told me it finds true north, that as long as I have it, I'll never be lost. He held it up so the light caught the brass. For 5 years, this compass was the only thing that reminded me who I really was. Not a janitor, not a failure, an architect who hadn't built anything yet. He put it back in his pocket. Find your compass, something that reminds you who you are when the world is telling you to be someone else. It doesn't have to be a physical object. It can be a memory, a person, a belief, anything that keeps you oriented toward your true north when everything else is trying to pull you off course. The class ended at 3:45 p.m. Students lingered afterward asking questions, sharing their own stories. Marcus listened to each one, answered as honestly as he could. One young man waited until everyone else had left. Mr. Thompson, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course. The student was maybe 20, thin, tired, wearing clothes that had been mended multiple times. I'm working 2 jobs to pay for school. My dad's sick. My mom can't work. I'm thinking about dropping out to help with bills. Marcus's heart clenched. What's your name? David. David Washington. David? Marcus sat down on the edge of the desk. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my place. But I want you to know that whatever you decide, it doesn't have to be permanent. But you lost 5 years. You said it yourself. I did, and those years were hard. The hardest of my life. Marcus paused. But they weren't wasted. I learned things in those 5 years that I never would have learned in a classroom. I learned patience, resilience, how to keep going when everything seems impossible. He met David's eyes. If you need to drop out, drop out. Take care of your family. That matters more than any degree. But don't stop learning. Don't stop dreaming. Don't let circumstance become identity. David nodded slowly. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Marcus, Call me Marcus." "Thank you, Marcus." The young man left. Marcus sat alone in the empty classroom thinking about all the Davids in the world, all the talented people who were being forced to choose between their dreams and their responsibilities. He couldn't save them all, but maybe he could save some. Maybe that was enough. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Williams. "Saw you on the news this morning. Your mother would be so proud. I'm so proud. Come visit when you can. I made your favorite." His mother. He hadn't been to her grave in months. Too busy, too overwhelmed by everything that was happening. He made a decision. The cemetery was quiet at 5:30 p.m. The winter sun was already fading, casting long shadows across rows of headstones. Marcus walked the familiar path to his mother's grave. He'd memorized it years ago. Could have found it blindfolded. The headstone was simple. Elizabeth Thompson, beloved mother. Rest in peace. He knelt in front of it. "Hey, Mom. It's been a while." The wind rustled through bare branches, otherwise silence. "I made it. I know you always said I would, but there were times I didn't believe you. Times I thought everything was over." He touched the cold stone. "I'm an architect now, a real one. I designed a building that's going to stand for 100 years. They put my name on the plans and everything." His voice cracked. "I wish you could see it. I wish you could have been there this morning. I was so scared, Mom, standing in front of all those people. But then I thought about you, about how you never let fear stop you from doing what needed to be done." Tears slipped down his cheeks. "I took care of you because you took care of me. You gave up everything so I could have a chance, and I'm not going to waste it. I promise. Everything I build, everything I do, it's because of you." He stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the cold, talking to a woman who couldn't answer, but somehow he felt like she heard him anyway. At 7:00 p.m. he stood up and wiped his face. "I have to go, Mom. Lots of work to do. Buildings to design, students to teach, a whole life to build." He kissed his fingers and pressed them to the stone. "I love you. I'll always love you, and I'll make you proud. I promise." He walked back to the car as the last light faded from the sky. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Design meetings, classes, media requests, speaking invitations. Marcus said yes to some things and no to others. He was learning to protect his time, to say no without guilt, to prioritize what mattered. The Crescent Tower took shape on paper and in computer models. Marcus worked alongside Jasmine and the engineering team, refining, adjusting, perfecting. Every decision mattered. Every line had consequences. He loved it. Even the frustrating parts, even the late nights and the impossible deadlines. This was what he was meant to do. This was who he was meant to be. In February, Pinnacle Architecture announced a new initiative, the Thompson Fellowship, named after Marcus, funded by the Sheik, designed to identify and support talented individuals from non-traditional backgrounds. "You don't have to use my name," Marcus told Whitmore. "Yes, we do. That's the whole point." Whitmore's voice was different now, softer, almost humble. "Your story is what makes this meaningful. If we just announced a generic scholarship, no one would care. But the Thompson Fellowship named after the janitor who became an architect, that means something. It feels strange, having my name on things. Get used to it. You've earned it." The first round of Thompson Fellows was announced in March. 12 recipients from across the country. A single mother in Chicago who had taught herself structural engineering through library books. A teenager in Detroit who had been designing buildings since he was 14. A former prison inmate who had discovered architecture during his incarceration. Marcus met each of them personally, listened to their stories, shared his own. "You're not alone," he told them. "Whatever you're facing, whatever obstacles are in your way, you're not alone. We see you, we believe in you, and we're going to help you build something extraordinary." In April, construction began on the Crescent Tower. Marcus stood at the site as the first steel beams went up, the same site where he'd delivered that speech 3 months ago, the same site that would hold his design for the next 100 years. Jasmine stood beside him. "How does it feel?" "Surreal, like watching a dream become solid." "That's exactly what it is." She bumped his shoulder. "A dream you never gave up on, even when everyone told you to." "I gave up sometimes, more than I like to admit. But you always came back. That's what matters." They watched the workers for a while. The controlled chaos of construction, the gradual transformation of empty space into something permanent. "I've been thinking," Jasmine said, "about starting my own firm someday, something different, something that actually looks for talent in unexpected places. You should do it. Would you be interested if I started something? Would you want to be part of it?" Marcus considered the question. Pinnacle had given him everything he'd asked for: salary, title, respect. But it was still a company built on old assumptions. Still a place where people like him were the exception, not the rule. "Yes," he said. "When you're ready, count me in." "Yeah? Yeah, let's build something better." In May, Marcus graduated from Howard University. Not the graduation he'd imagined 6 years ago. Not the bright-eyed 26-year-old who had been 3 months from finishing. This was a different person walking across that stage. Older. Weathered. Wiser. Professor Williams presented him with his diploma personally. "It took you a little longer than expected," the professor said, eyes gleaming. "But you made it. I always knew you would." Mrs. Williams sat in the front row. David Washington, the student who had been thinking about dropping out, sat beside her. He'd decided to stay in school. Had told Marcus it was because of their conversation. After the ceremony, they all gathered for photographs. Marcus in his cap and gown, Mrs. Williams crying, David looking at him with something like hope. "What now?" Professor Williams asked. "Now I build things, teach things, change things." Marcus smiled. "Now I become who I was always supposed to be." In June, the Crescent Tower reached its 20th floor. Marcus visited the site every week, watching his design become reality, walking through spaces that had only existed in his mind and his sketches. The construction foreman recognized him now, treated him with respect, even asked for his input on problems that arose. "You know this building better than anyone," the foreman said. "Makes sense to ask the guy who designed it." The guy who designed it. Those words still felt strange, still felt like they belonged to someone else. But they were his. He had earned them. Every calculation, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt and determination. In August, Marcus received a letter from the American Institute of Architects. He had been nominated for the Young Architect Award, the youngest nominee in the award's history, the first nominee who had ever worked as a maintenance worker. He read the letter 3 times before he believed it. That night, he called Professor Williams. "I don't know if I deserve this. There are so many talented people who've been doing this longer than me." "Marcus," the professor's voice was firm, "you solved a problem that thousands of architects couldn't solve. You did it with nothing but determination and a brass compass. If that doesn't deserve recognition, I don't know what does. It just feels like too much, too fast. A year ago, I was cleaning toilets. And now you're changing the industry. That's not too fast. That's exactly fast enough." The professor paused. "Your mother used to call me, you know, after you dropped out. She wanted to make sure I wouldn't forget you, wouldn't stop believing in you." Marcus's throat tightened. "She never told me that." "She wouldn't. That wasn't her style. But she never stopped fighting for your future, even when she was dying, even when everything seemed hopeless." Professor Williams' voice softened. "Accept the nomination, Marcus. Win the award. And dedicate it to her. She earned it as much as you did." The ceremony was in October. Marcus wore a tuxedo for the first time in his life. Jasmine helped him with the bow tie, laughing at his fumbling attempts. "You've designed skyscrapers, but you can't tie a bow tie. Different skill set." The ballroom was filled with architects from around the world, legends of the profession, people whose buildings Marcus had studied by candlelight in his dark apartment, and now he was standing among them, being introduced as their peer. The award was announced at 9:47 p.m. The winner of this year's Young Architect Award for extraordinary achievement in structural design and for inspiring a new generation of architects from non-traditional backgrounds is Marcus Thompson. The applause was thunderous. Marcus walked to the stage on legs that had finally stopped shaking. He accepted the crystal trophy and stepped up to the microphone. 6 years ago, I dropped out of college to take care of my dying mother. I thought my life was over. I thought everything I dreamed of was gone forever." He looked out at the crowd. 5 years ago, I took a job as a janitor at an architecture firm. I cleaned their floors. I emptied their trash. And every night, I went home to a dark apartment and taught myself everything they knew, everything they thought I had no right to know." His voice grew stronger. 1 year ago, I was kneeling on a marble floor bleeding while executives stepped around me like I was invisible. I had accepted that invisibility as my fate. I had given up on ever being seen. He held up the trophy. But someone saw me anyway. Someone believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself, and that changed everything. He thought about all the people who had helped him. Jasmine, Mrs. Williams, Professor Williams, the Sheik, even Whitmore in his own complicated way. "This award isn't really for me. It's for everyone who refuses to give up. Everyone who keeps learning when the world tells them to stop. Everyone who holds on to their dreams even when circumstances try to crush them. He looked directly into the camera broadcasting the ceremony worldwide. Wherever you are right now, whatever you're facing, I want you to know that your circumstances do not define your potential. Your job title does not determine your worth. Your past does not dictate your future. He raised the trophy higher. This is for everyone who's ever been invisible. Everyone who's ever been told to know their place. Everyone who's ever looked at a building and thought I could design something better. His voice rang through the ballroom. You can, you will, and the world is waiting to see what you build. The applause continued for a long time after he left the stage. In December, the Crescent Tower was completed. Marcus stood at the top of the building he had designed, looking out at the Dubai skyline. The city spread below him, like a circuit board of lights and shadows. Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour stood beside him. It's beautiful, the sheikh said. Even more beautiful than I imagined. It's not just a building, Marcus replied. It's a statement about what's possible, about who gets to build things, about whose ideas matter. Yes, it is all of those things. The sheikh turned to face him. I have a proposition for you, Marcus. Another one. A final one. For now. The sheikh smiled. I want you to design my next project, not as a consultant, as the primary architect, full creative control, unlimited budget, a building that will change the way the world thinks about architecture. Marcus stared at him. You're serious. I'm always serious about architecture, and about people who have earned my trust. What kind of building? A school, a world-class school of architecture and engineering built right here in Dubai, free for any student who can demonstrate talent regardless of their background or circumstances. The sheikh's eyes gleamed. A place where janitors can become architects, where invisible people can become visible, where talent is the only credential that matters. Marcus thought about David Washington, about the Thompson Fellows, about all the people who had never gotten the chance he'd finally received. Yes, he said, I'll do it. Excellent. The sheikh shook his hand. I look forward to seeing what you create. That night, Marcus called his mother's grave. Not literally, of course, but he stood at his apartment window phone in his hand and talked to her anyway. I did it, Mom. I built something that's going to last, something that's going to help people like me, people who got lost but never stopped trying to find their way. He looked at his grandfather's compass sitting on his desk where it had always sat, true north, no matter what. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not afraid anymore, and I'm never going to stop building. His phone buzzed, a text from Jasmine. The firm papers are ready, Thompson Carter Architecture. It's official. His own firm, his own name on the door. His own chance to build something better than what had come before. Marcus Thompson smiled. It had taken 6 years, 5 years of darkness, 1 year of blinding light. But he had finally become who he was always supposed to be. Not a janitor, not a dropout, not an invisible man who cleaned floors and swallowed insults. An architect, a teacher, a builder of dreams. He picked up his grandfather's compass and felt the weight of it in his hand. The same weight it had always had. The same true north it had always pointed toward. But everything else was different now. He was different, and the world would never be able to unsee him again. Marcus Thompson set down the compass and reached for his sketchbook. There were buildings to design, students to teach, futures to construct. The work was just beginning, and this time nothing would stop him, because the real architect had finally taken his place at the table, and he was never going back to the floor.